started. Good evening. Sorry for the delay. Call the meeting to order, and we will go out of order. And if I will let the Baptist Church go first. And I think because of the way we have the table, if you want to put chairs on the side or
You can
sit.
either join me or sit there.
We have space for you over here, and the microphone all set up.
And if you just want to identify yourself so that when Beth's doing the minutes, she has.
Good evening, I'm David Libby, and beside me is Steve Reichley from the Baptist Church of Grafton.
Go ahead.
So
So if you want to update us from last month of the additional information that you were able to obtain.
happy to do that. There are several, I guess, significant changes to the application, mostly in response to the comments that we received at the February meeting. Perhaps most important to you folks is that we have clarified that we are going to replace the existing wooden parts with new wooden parts. No composites or synthetics. We have increased the cost estimate in two ways. One, we've increased what we might refer to as the expected, hoped-for cost of the project. And secondly, we've laid on a substantial contingency margin. It exceeds the 20% that you folks had mentioned last time. We did that purposely because of our concern as to what we're going to find when we open these columns up and actually get to see what's inside them.
Okay.
Third, we've added a new proposal from a fourth contractor, which is Merit Construction Services. This company is currently doing work on South Street at two buildings, one of which has columns in front of it that need similar kinds of repairs to what we're contemplating. We have impressed upon all of the contractors that we've been talking with that we cannot use composites, that they have to use wood, and they've all accepted that requirement. So I guess I'm not aware of any other specific changes that you asked us to consider for the for the application. But I'm happy to answer any questions you have based on the new revised application. And I would, I guess, close my opening comments by reminding us that we're talking about a project to preserve the exterior of one of the buildings that forms the jewel necklace around the common, if you will, and that supporting this project should benefit everyone in Grafton who appreciates this historic part of town for what it is. It's not a project that only benefits a small number of people or a particular segment of town. It should benefit everybody. Having said that, I noticed this afternoon that there is an inconsistency between the cost numbers on the first page of the revised application and the detailed budget estimate at the back of the application. And I brought corrected front pages to match the detail, which I'm happy to provide to all of you. Steve, would you give those to these folks.
It's just off by 5,000 on the front page.
Right. It's what happens when you let a financial engineer mess with financial data.
I think it's also something that I have notes, I would like to see our application get streamlined, cleaned up, made simpler. It's kind of a one-size-fits-all, because it's for every kind of project, and it may be that we need a project for
Thank you.
the affordable housing, a project for historic, because otherwise it's 500 pages of nothing that matters to your project.
It can be that way, I suppose, but we got through it. Are there any questions from any of you that we can answer?
So the request is 65,000. And what's the new contingency amount?
The contingency is about $19,000. There's no magic to that number whatsoever.
And that's included in the 65?
Yes, it is.
Okay. Does anyone have any concerns, questions, comments?
Just a quick comment. I think that this project is very, very well presented. I think it's very important. I think, like you said, this serves the community in more ways than just being a project for historical preservation. The church, there's a lot of community involved in it. There's recreation elements to it. So I just wanted to say I think this is a very important project for us to fund.
Thank you.
I'll say that, yes, this is higher than 20% contingency, but I think for the reasons that you expressed and what we talked about last time, it makes sense, and I'm happy with that.
I'll reinforce what you said, that this is a key part of our historic district. I like the necklace.
Yeah, I'm trying to come up with, like, the emerald necklace in Boston. We
I
need to come up,
stole that from somewhere.
we
I
need to
have
come up with,
confess.
because Unitarians, Congregational, all are part of that necklace, and we need to come up with the,
And I hesitate to bring it up, but I'm going to anyways. There has been some, in some towns, it hasn't really raised its head here, but there's been concern about funding for religious entities. And I don't think that's an issue here. From my reading on the subject, when it becomes an issue is when whatever is being done involves religious iconery, imagery. I know there was an example of stained glass windows in, I believe it was Acton. That's not the case here. This is simply structural work on a building. There's no religious imagery involved at all. And it is an important structure to our historic district. I'm in full support of it.
Thank you.
any other,
Yeah, I agree with the other
okay,
members of the committee.
sounds good.
All right,
And if you want to stay, because we'll go over with the other applicants, their applications, and then we'll vote. So if you want to stay for
I think
that,
I might like to stay for that, yeah.
you're welcome to stay. We always like to
Thank you.
tell people you don't need to stay, because unlike Colleen, this isn't the most fun thing to do.
This is the most fun thing to do. What are you talking about? Wait all month for this.
Who's going to speak for Congregational? Andy DeShane. Welcome. So again, if you want to identify yourselves so that Beth,
Absolutely.
minutes.
Good evening, everybody. Andy DeShane, 13 Meadowbrook Road, in classic fashion.
Rob Lane, 35 North Street.
Great.
and if you want to provide us with the updated information from the last meeting?
You bet. There are three main things we wanted to talk about. We've been doing a lot of, excuse me, a lot of hard work, and we're making progress. So on the fundraising, so you've seen the updated budget. I know we sent that ahead of time. So we've broken things out a little bit more carefully so that you can see kind of how we're approaching this. On the fundraising side of things, we had a target of $50,000 to fundraise from the church, and we're just over 40. So we're nearly there in a month, which was, I thought, outstanding. The budget has been broken out a bit, so we did separate sort of restoration paint from maintenance paint, as you had suggested. Our carpentry number, our painter thinks it's much too high. I'll be happy if they're right. If you look at that carpentry number of 30,000, and if you took, if we're double what it should be, and you take 15 out of that and turn that into contingency along with our other $15,000 in contingency, that's 30K, which is about, it's just a hair over 20% of $145,000. So I think we're doing okay on the money side of things. We're being careful about approaching this in the right way. And the third, so that was fundraising, the budget, and then the third piece that I just wanted to report on is just the letter of support that we got from Mass Historical Commission relative to the Rhino Shield product that we've been talking about doing. So that was, I think, good news from Mass Historic as well.
And then Paul had communicated with the Community Preservation Coalition, and they, Stuart was supportive as well, correct?
So I communicated with two different groups. As I mentioned last month, I had communicated with Stuart, who basically says that with regard to Rhino Shield, because I had asked, because of its significantly longer warranty, it's 25 years versus 2 to 7 for, I believe, the other normal paint that you had secured bids on. Could we consider that as a more of a preservation than a maintenance item? In his viewpoint, that perspective is left to the local CPC to make those calls.
Sure.
He certainly felt like it was a legitimate question to ask. And he did have some questions about Rhino Shield being an acceptable method for preserving structures. He didn't have a lot of experience with it, just what he'd seen in ads and on TV and whatnot. But he did put me, well, he didn't put me in touch. He gave me emails for Preservation Trust, I believe is the name, Massachusetts.
Preservation Mass.
Yeah, Mass
Preservation, one of the two.
Yes.
Which, I don't know which one comes first.
At any rate, I finally heard back from them today. Took forever. And they basically said the same thing as him. I had shared with them the approval that you had gotten from Mass Historic, because they hold a preservation restriction on the building, which they felt was good and gives you the go-ahead to do that work. They also felt it was good that there was an example of CPC funds being used for Rhino Shield in another community, specifically Belchertown used it for 2 historic structures in 2018. I don't have any input from town council on this. I don't know if the members here feel we need it or are comfortable making a decision on it on their own, whether we feel Rhino Shield rises to the level of a preservation effort rather than a maintenance. I think, it's a huge difference in the warranty. 25 years is a significant difference from 2 to 7. So I could argue it that way, but I think we need to decide as a committee how we want to proceed on that. I did have a question, though, on your revised numbers here. You have broken out paint between restoration and maintenance, so how did you arrive at those?
Sort of looked at the building and tried to find a reasonable split between the two sort of categories. So it was sort of just literally looking at the building and trying to go, all right, is it a 50-50 split, 60-40? Where does this kind of divide? So it's a little bit of a judgment call.
Yep.
But that's basically the way we did that.
Okay.
And I would agree that the Mass Historical support is probably the strongest support, because they're the ones that holds the preservation restriction on your building.
Right.
And they get to decide. It doesn't
Yeah,
matter
they do.
if what we say.
Right.
If they say no,
Right,
then that's the end of the conversation.
absolutely.
So
right.
since they are saying, yes, this is okay, I think that gives us a lot stronger case to support it as well.
Right, yep. Yeah, absolutely. If it would have been a no, we wouldn't,
Right,
this would be a different conversation, right?
And I did share that correspondence that I had with Stuart as well as the woman from Mass Preservation.
Yeah, so I had a question about that because I'm reading it a little bit differently than you. Stuart very clearly lies out that new paint or a rhino shield, just because it's peeling after 10 years, would be considered maintenance and it won't be covered with CPA. So he doesn't make a distinction with the paint or the rhino shield in his response. And I know he did say that he can't weigh in at all because it's a church project, but he did weigh in, and that was his weigh in. And then I went to the Rhino Shield website, and I know so much hinges on this warranty, and there's a huge asterisk that says it does not apply to commercial, industrial, or residential, or certain residential applications. So I beg to wonder, like, is it gonna apply to this?
We've had some very careful conversations about the language around their 25-year warranty, and we're going to continue to do that because Rob had some conversations with their sales guy, and yeah, it's gonna take a little bit more discussions and getting things in writing to make sure that it is what it sounds like. At first blush, they were like, well, I mean, we can't come back and hit the same thing more than once in 25 years. It initially sounded like we'll come back once in 25 years, which is that's not a 25-year warranty. But then more, well, you talked to him, so.
Yeah, so I had a conversation with the salesperson a number of times, a couple times on the warranty itself. The representation from the salesperson is that it will apply to this structure. We do have more negotiation to do around the contract, once we have a little more certainty as to whether or not this is something that can be covered through the funding sources we've identified. And we will be shoring up a little bit more language around the warranty, but it is represented by the company that it will apply to this particular structure.
When will you have that shored up warranty language? Just because so much of this is contingent on that warranty and the way Paul's trying to present it. If it turns out that it's not gonna work and it's just another type of paint, it's problematic.
Well, if that's the case, the warrant article, usually we write the warrant articles fairly broad. But with this, it would specifically state Rhino Shield with the 25-year warranty. So if, and we have the budget, so if that falls out, then the funding for carpentry would still survive. And
Walkway, all that.
the
Right,
funding for the
right.
walkway would still survive.
Right.
But the funding for the Rhino Shield would not.
I mean, to be clear, the discussion that we were having around the warranty was not about the applicability of it to the building.
Right.
It was around an exclusion that we were concerned about with the number of times they would come out to address issues on the building. The first read of it, I was concerned that it was a one trip out in 25 years, which is silly, to be candid. And that is not what it was. It's represented by the salesperson that they're concerned about underlying structural defects in the building. His example was a broken water pipe that might be causing moisture issues, and that's not their issue to come out year after year. It's our issue to solve whatever the underlying issue is. But it was absolutely not a question of whether or not the building itself was going to be covered, and we'll be negotiating with Rhino Shield around tightening up how many times they will come out to fix areas and who the source of the issue is, whether it's their product or underlying structural defects with the building. that sort of thing.
Contractually, it's pretty that's a pretty normal back and forth. They wanna cover themselves from not having to come out every other week for some crazy church group that says, oh, I see a nail head or something, you know, so they don't wanna get caught, unprotected, but we similarly wanna make sure that if we have legitimate issues going down the road, that they'll come out and fix
Take
it.
care of it.
So, That to me that's normal negotiation stuff.
What type
but-
of warranty would a regular paint be, though? You know what I
It's-
mean? Would
we-
it be
we had-
similar where they can come out a
Of-
couple times?
Of
and-
the other 4 quotes that we had, 2 of them didn't give a warranty at all. One had 2 years and one was 7 years.
And with the 7-year, would it be the same pushback? We're only gonna come out if it's, not your problem, like, you know what I mean?
Yeah, we
Similar
didn't.
pushback.
So we didn't get into that level of detail with them, but that was, so at least their initial take. I'm sure everybody has the same sort of, we need to protect ourselves, we're not gonna come out, if there's a broken water pipe that wrecks the paint, or if there's an area of the building that traps water that's gonna cause the paint to fail. They're gonna put some sort of, detail in there that's gonna cover them from anything that's problematic that no paint would be able to cover. So I think that's pretty normal, but we didn't go down to that detail with the other 2 that gave us warranties.
So Justin and then Paul.
Who can hear me? So, my first thought is with Paul's comment about talking to a town attorney. I'm not as strongly in favor that we need that, given the response I did read from the coalition, that it seems like they did clearly say maintenance isn't covered, but that the ultimate decision on is Rhino Shield okay as, because it's 25 years is kind of up to us. And I don't think, if the coalition's telling us that, I don't imagine our attorney's gonna give us anything better. That's my gut feeling on that. And then the other thing to say is, seeing that even the 46,000 as they put is listed as maintenance for the paint on the breakout, their ask is 120,000 from us, and their entire restoration cost is 123. So at least from my looking at this, I'm not that worried
You mean 175?
on the
No.
on the restoration
Okay,
column.
okay.
The restoration cost is 123, and their CPA estimate for us is 120, which means that everything the CPA funds will be funding is part of the restoration column in this project. That's one reason that I'm okay with that, even hearing the maintenance piece from the CPA's email, coalition's email. So just wanted to call that out.
Okay, Paul?
So both Stewart and the preservation, mass preservation folks said the same thing, and I'll just read it here. Your question on if Rhino Shield could qualify for CPA as a capital improvement is an excellent one. Ordinarily, painting is usually maintenance unless the painting followed exterior rehabilitation work first. But we just don't know if Rhino Shield rises to the level of a capital improvement. Here are 2 definitions. So he gave 2 definitions, one for capital improvement and one for maintenance. I won't read them all. But then he goes on. Which definition best describes Rhino Shield is a local decision that your CPC is going to have to make, perhaps in consultation with town council and/or a preservation expert like the circuit riders, which are the folks that I talked to, who, if you guys read what I sent you, said the same thing. So it's our call on whether we do it or not. I'm not so concerned. I think on this one, for the reasons that Justin just outlined, I think we're fine with treating it that way. It's just whether or not we're going to apply this definition moving forward on other projects. Are we going to look at each one individually? Or are we making a general decision that Rhino Shield?
I think we need to look at each project individually, because each building is gonna be very individual, and
Yep.
it's gonna have its own peculiar issues, but also, I would say Rhino Shield we're making a statement that we would approve that for projects, because Mass Historical has said it's okay.
Yeah.
I mean, yes, Mass Historical.
Yeah, I think that the question of whether Rhino Shield constitutes a capital improvement or not is really not the question, because the way you have structured the grant proposal is that there is a section that is restoration and covering it with some kind of a paint material. And some kind of a paint material happens to be Rhino Shield, which is approved by the Historical Society, and this committee is willing to pay for it. apparently. And so the fact that, you're using Rhino Shield on the rest of the building is your own issue, and you've structured the project that way. So it doesn't really matter whether we consider it capital or not, because it's only being applied to the restored area.
Did you have a comment?
Yeah, I do, because the sentence right before where Paul started reading is the part where he specifically calls out Rhino Shield. But if the wood repair is elsewhere on the building and they just need a new coat of paint or Rhino Shield, just because it's peeling after 10 years, that would be maintenance in most cases, and we know CPA can't pay for maintenance.
Right, so that's the $46,000 for paint, is the maintenance portion.
Well, subjectively, yes.
Well,
But you said also after 10 years,
Yeah.
that you're assuming in 10 years they're gonna come back to us.
this
That-
is the-
No,
right?
no, I'm not assuming in 10 years. No.
No, but that's what, I thought that's what you read. I don't have that in front of me, so.
That's just what Stuart wrote.
No,
So-
but that would be maintenance, because within 10 years, that is maintenance.
Right, but the maintenance part is not not part of the
Right,
of the
and I think
proposed
that's,
grant.
The point is moot for this particular proposal. It's whether or not, moving forward for other projects, we want to consider it. I think it's worthy of discussion. We could either take it up at another meeting just to figure out where we want to go with it, or deal with it on an individual basis as projects come to us. The point that he was making is correct. Colleen, Stewart's comment is that normally it is considered maintenance. But then he goes on to clarify, your question about that is a good one, because we really don't know. And that's a decision that needs to be made at the local level. So he qualified the earlier statement.
So just kind of a thought, and more to dealing with like more of the regulatory stuff that I typically deal with, is that when, we go to vote on this, that we do a finding. And I think the finding is, the Rhino paint, we have not decided on Rhino paint being, preservation versus just simply paint for maintenance. And then, but because of the way this was submitted, it doesn't really impact it. However, gives us the opportunity to then go to town council or someone else, because to me, the way I look at it, there's kind of the regulations and what you're doing, and then we have a specific material, and I look at it from like a structure or a pavement or something. You're now saying that, ooh, if you do it this way, I'm just saying, have a finding or have something in here that says, this is why we did it. So it's not, we're not making any precedent, especially
Right. Make
dealing
it
with
clear.
a specific material as opposed to,
Agreed.
anything else. So.
okay, that sounds good.
Yeah, I have a very important clarification I want to hear based on what Ken just said. So he's saying because the maintenance and the restoration involves, I'm not sure if it's specifically, but taking down walls, taking down pieces of the building that need to then be painted afterwards. Is that correct?
Or removing rotten wood.
Removing rotten wood.
Right.
Okay, perfect.
Yes.
Exactly. Removing rotten wood. So what you're saying, Ken, is if you take down rotten wood, we can pay for then paying the new wood that gets there.
Correct.
Yes.
Right,
And it doesn't matter if it's Rhino Shield or Benjamin Moore.
Okay.
We
It's
can
always
pay
been
for
the
that.
case.
But this is
And
That's the
and the
exact-
surrounding area,
but that's the
but not the other
this is the
area.
exact scenario that got us into having to have this long-winded what is maintenance, what is not painting. It was the exact same scenario. Taking down walls with rotted wood, you have to paint it afterwards, and that was the hard stop. If you're gonna paint those walls after you take them down, no money from us.
No.
That was the
The-
exact.
It went down a little further, which was what percentage? What percentage of the restoration versus the rest would just be
So it looks like
painted
it-
to match?
there's 69-46.
I'm talking about the previous project. The previous project, it really hinged on the percentage. Stuart gave us a percentage that we need to target. If more than a certain percentage was painting and not just painting restoration, then it was a no.
Okay, so
And
it
that's what, that was the
take
no
more
for
to
that one.
paint the walls than take them down and replace them?
We didn't have a clear estimate that was given to us. He was gonna have to go back, Evan was gonna have to go back to do it, and he chose not to.
Yeah, we asked him to do this, but he declined to do it.
Okay. All right. We had
This one, we're not being asked to fund any maintenance, we're only being asked to fund restoration works.
You know,
But-
asked
but
Ev-
we
asked
also
Evan
haven't
to go back
asked-
and structure it like this, but he declined.
Yeah, he gave us a 30-70 at the meeting.
We're not talking about that project, we're talking about this
Right.
project. But that was the thing, did anybody ask the percentage of this? What percentage of it is restoration versus maintenance? I see that you've subjectively earlier mentioned that, but do you have the percentage breakdown?
Yeah, it's right there. It's
69.
Yeah, it's 69 divided by 115.
Are you looking for evidence for that percentage?
Well, no, wait, so like last time I think it was 80-20, so is this like a, what is it, 60-40 you're saying? What,
It's,
what?
69, 115.
Sure, can you do the math for me? What's the percentage? Thank you.
So here's the treasurer cap.
So,
See what it
and I think, you know, again, it's just for us,
60%.
for us to do kind of our due diligence and to make sure that, you know, as a question comes up. So having a robust
60%.
discussion is important.
Restoration.
And so, you know, you
40%.
went out and you looked at at your building and you have to do a certain amount of repair for the woods and so, the wood, taking it down, putting it up. And based on that assessment of the different areas, you know, I guess the question is, are we trying to say, hey, we need measurements, or is having an estimate of, I got, and this is just an exaggeration, I got 3 sides, and the 4th side I'm just painting because I have to do
Yeah.
this, that's 75%.
Right.
Now, so I guess the question I have is, as far as the
Assuming it's
committee go,
square.
huh?
Assuming it's a square.
Well, true, yes, we're not gonna get into that level. But, you know, as a discussion for the committee, is a question, you know, is having someone go out and doing an estimate based on looking at it, a visual assessment, we'll call it, versus a measured, you know, specific, is that fine? I think, are we comfortable with
So I
that?
guess
It's been fine in
The
prior.
exact measurement could only be done after, you could only be made after it's
I
done.
get it,
Right.
I get it. And again, I'm just,
Could be far
I'm
higher.
trying to get to that one thing that is kind of,
But at the previous project, it was an 80-20 split, correct?
Yep.
80% restoration, and then we could cover it. And on this one, it's 60-40. So we're okay with a 60-40 split on this project, but we required an 80-20 of the other project. I'm just looking for
We didn't
clarification.
Percentage
require it.
doesn't matter because they're not asking us for any funding for maintenance
But
items. They're only
the other
asking
part of
for
it is
funding on
it's
preservation.
irrelevant. It's a-
Okay.
It was
it's a-
super
it's a-
relevant
it's a-
last time, so I'm just
Because
looking,
they were
I'm looking
asking
for
for funding for
clarification.
all
They
of
never
it.
came back and said, this is what we're doing tonight, this is our follow-up amended application. He stopped at the initial. That was that's what stopped it, was that he didn't come back to say, it's gonna be this, it's 80%, 20%, whatever, restoration versus strictly painting.
Because people had already reached out to the state, and the state had said it needs to be 80-20. So at that first one, that applicant was presented with the 80-20.
if you pay for
Hold
the
on,
whole
let me,
thing.
can I finish,
If you
please?
pay for the
What?
whole thing, but we're not paying for the whole thing.
All right, okay.
I think your minds are made up on this, so I think we would just,
no, it's not about minds made up. It's about a committee talking honestly and outward, being mature and saying, these are what our opinions are. And what it's based on previous, you know, action and so forth, and talk about what is moving forward, if there's any other additional information required. It's not, you know, that's my perception. I'm here,
Okay, Sandy.
I don't know you guys. I will say this, and don't take offense to it, I don't really care. I care about, I care about
That's
following.
good, she's
this isn't-
neutral,
this
that's what we
isn't-
like her.
We're not the last ones that are gonna come in front of
Right,
you
I
with it.
care about doing the right thing.
True,
That's all.
absolutely. No, no offense taken.
Justin,
Yeah.
So, I'll just say very briefly that, to Colin's point, with what we got in the past with the email from the coalition, I think if we were paying for the majority of this, or, you know, really close to the majority of it, 80-20 would be my, you know, baseline that we would need to have to pay for the entire thing. I think the reason I'm okay with this is because of the breakdown and the estimate that was provided and showing that not even a penny is being spent on the maintenance aspect of it. I think if we were spending even some of the money based on the breakdown on maintenance, I'd have a little bit more of a concern trying to figure out a little bit better. But I think based on this, I'm okay.
yeah, I think a very important part of this, I'm totally in favor of this, especially because I like seeing the applicant raising money on their own, going towards that project. I think that's extremely important and very impressive. And everything I just said about the last, this is a church restoration brings to the community. I would argue there's even recreation elements to it. Just, like you said, good discussion about making sure going forward, I think that this is something we should be funding regardless of those things. But fully understand that the rules are the rules.
Yeah.
Okay.
And yeah, and all I was trying to do is so that we have a robust conversation, the next time we have a good sense of what the committee is what they're looking at. We're generally on the same page. And it doesn't matter if we're not on the same page because it's a vote.
Right, we all get to vote.
Appreciate that,
We all
Sam.
have-
Yeah, no, and as
Perspective.
I always say to Concom, you don't have to vote yes if everyone is. Vote what you think. So, it's called democracy.
Okay. Not hearing any other comments or questions? Thank you, and I'll give you the same advice. If you like to stay, we're happy for you to stay, but if that's not your idea of fun, you can go home.
Thank you.
If you, it's like watching paint dry, not to be, have a pun or whatever.
Is that, I don't know if
I
you
don't know what
use that
that is.
analogy.
Ray. I just saw you on his, there's Ray. Is Ray, where we can hear her and she can hear us? Hi, how are you?
Oh, good. How are you doing?
Good, welcome.
I can't see anyone.
That's okay, especially me.
I can do.
But I,
Do you want to,
hi, I'm
if,
here.
if the lights are off, can she see, or she just can't see because the owl's don't work? Okay.
Unfortunately.
We can see you, Ray.
So I suggest when we, because she cannot see us, we actually identify who we are
So
when we
wait.
talk.
Oh,
for
there
me
we are.
to-
Hi.
So you can see?
Now,
Now I can
because
see
Justin
you.
just turned his
Oh,
computer on.
Nice job.
Gremlins. So Ray, if you have any additional information that you want to add from your last presentation?
Sure. The purpose and the narrative of the grant application has remained the same, to complete the interior restoration of the Hassamusco Homestead on the reservation at 80 Brigham Hill Road. And the only update is to add in a contingency. So again, reminding everyone, we have been awarded a grant through Mass Cultural of $137,000. It does require a 100% match. And we have 2 years from, I believe it's last October, to get the match and complete the project. So we applied through CPC, the match of 137. We have, in addition, $11,000 we anticipate would be in kind through materials and labor of the tribe. And then, we added a 20% contingent. So the total, amount now requested of CPA is, 194,000. And that's the only difference from, in the application from last month. The contingency,
57?
added to 57, if you add 137 and 137. And I did it based on adding in the in-kind as well, assuming that we would want to look at the total amounts.
Okay, any questions for Ray?
I have a quick.
Kristen?
Hi, this is Kristen Belanger. Can you just explain to me again, for this project, how the public would interact on the homestead?
Sure. The restoration will result in the building being returned to a museum. So the museum will be open to the public. I can't say exactly what days and times and hours, but it will be open on a regular basis to the public. So it'll be a publicly facing educational institution. So serving both people in Grafton, tribal members, and people who come from out of town as well.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
So hopefully, I know it's a year or two down the road, but when this happens, Grafton third graders have a really strong program already. They go to Willard House, they go to the Historical Society, they go to the Common, that this can be one more, they'll have a very busy day, but it can be one more thing that they get to do on that special day, that they learn about Grafton history.
I just want to say, just another compliment. I can't think of a project that embodies what we do here more than something like this. I think this is a perfect project for us.
Anybody else? Okay, same.
Oh,
Ken?
Ray, I just noticed that you said the project will commence as soon as the funding is secured. I just want to say that the funding that bringing to town meeting to approve would be available July 1st.
Okay, great, that's a good reminder, because I know that town meeting is in May, and I have that on my calendar as well, and would be
And it is for
planning
the,
to
it's for the
attend in
next fiscal
person.
year, which starts June 1st, or July 1st.
Right, but is the town so the town meeting is July 1st or in May?
It's May 12th or 13th, so at that point, the money is guaranteed. It just, you can't submit a bill. I don't know that you can create a bill until July 1st.
Right,
So that if
okay.
you have, and that's, I know, and I'm not sure how you're working your other grant, that, and again, you're gonna have a lot of pauses with me tonight when my brain catches up.
It's late, I know.
That, that you can start negotiations on finding a contractor, all those kind of things, because that is gonna take a little while, I would think. So it's not like you have to wait until July 1st, because it will take you, a little while to get all those things up and running and started. So.
Yeah, we have to do an RFP, so basically the timeline would be, if it's approved at town meeting in May, then we would know that the funding is secured, and then I would go back to Mass Cultural, and I have to enter, we cannot enter into a contract with them until we have the match. So
And
once
that
the
would be
match
on-
is confirmed, then I would enter into a contract with them, but I would go back and confirm all the process with them again.
May 13th, I think, is town meeting. So that's the date that we would approve the money, even though you can't write the check we can't write the check till July 1st. The funding will be in place, because we've done this before with Mass Historical on preservation projects funds, that they require a match, the same thing. And the money wouldn't be available until July, that it's secure. At that point, the money is encumbered and it's available to you as of July the 1st. The other thing that we'll need to do is update a preservation restriction that will probably say for 10 years. It's not gonna be a lifetime or in perpetuity, but, short term, because we do have to have a legal interest, for some length of time. So, and it will
Yes,
just,
and I've raised that with our leadership as well, and let them know that would be part of this process.
and it'll probably be identical to the one that we did the first time, so, or very similar. And I'm looking at you like you can see me.
Go to Ken.
Okay, anyone else? I said just shake your heads and laugh at me. Okay, thank you.
Thanks,
And
Renee.
again,
Thank
you
you.
can,
It
you
was
can
good
stay.
to see everyone.
and
I'm sorry I
wait.
couldn't be there in person. I'll see you in May. I have
Yep.
one on my calendar.
Good,
Thank you.
Thank you.
okay, so, Jack, I made you wait till last.
That's all right. And I'm
Since you're
doing,
here.
do you want me to do the Affordable Housing Trust?
You're, you're doing the $20,000,
Right. So I sent in the application. It wasn't cooperating extremely well when I tried to do the exact breakdown in our budget categories. It would all be other. We had a good meeting about this last Tuesday. We requested another check. So as of right now, the pilot program has shown incredible success. Mostly it's the family units, which is good for us to be able to help. So I put in a formal project request of $20,000 to be, I don't know exactly what you'd call the account, but it would be,
It's rental assistance is what we're calling it.
yes, what you would call the type of actual bank account, because it's 20,000, but I'm not asking for 20,000 a year. I'm asking for an account that is filled to.
No, what we'll do is there will be a fund, just like in that report, there'll be $20,000 in that, and as your director sends us invoices, it just will deplete that down to zero. So if you deplete it down to zero before the end of July, you can do it again.
Perfect.
And for the August application for October.
All right, so, our executive director would like to meet with Beth to put in place some guardrails and an application process. I trust her completely with this project. Like I said, she's already been executing this, but we want to make absolutely sure that we don't get this project in place, this program in place to help people, and then someone swoops in and says, oh, no, favoritism or this, or you have to shut this whole thing down. So we're gonna put a lot in place to make sure that that doesn't happen. I've been trying to figure out how to say this word. I'm not even gonna try. Keeping people anonymous is an enormous priority as well. As
And that has worked perfectly so far. All the invoices are numbered. It has a number for like the
Yep.
resident, an invoice number, and an amount. So that is the long and the
we,
short of the invoice.
we don't even know. Like, our board is very specific, like, the housing authority is not to have, like, a lot of interaction with tenants. We are specifically supposed to be an oversight board, and that's how we functioned. The only thing, I did speak with Aaron and Jim's son, and they have given us the full green light to call this. I wanted it to be a little bit shorter, not as long, just the Jim Gallagher Fund. We'll be talking about it at town meeting when it comes up, so if you want more specifics about it. But I think it would be a great thing to do, and right now I'm happy with the application, happy with the rollout, happy with being able to use the funds already and showing success with it, so.
So when we do this at town meeting, I don't know how we can talk to the moderator, how we want this to be introduced. But hopefully, I don't know if you would introduce it, but then also to have them stand up for their father.
Oh, yeah,
To
we
be
can definitely talk about that,
recognized.
yep.
You know, to have some, not a huge ceremony, but just an acknowledgement so that they have an opportunity to know about it, and that they're there.
Yeah, absolutely, I'll get that working.
And, again, his wife, I'm just totally,
Deborah.
Deb,
Good
that
timing.
she's in, like, South Shore. I mean, if she is able to come to make
Reach
sure
out.
we can, I have her phone number, I can text her.
Yeah, like I said, this program has already shown great success. We have a record number of vacancies now. That being due to, fortunately and unfortunately, we did really well in preserving our numbers during COVID. And now we're kind of seeing a return to normalcy. But because it was, decent for that period, it's a lot more jarring. And
So does that means they're getting housing elsewhere?
Not generally. Generally means that someone has passed away or they're
Oh,
moving in with
okay.
family. But when people move out or leave these family units, they're like 20 years untouched. So we have to go in
Lot of work.
and turn it over, and we have 2 maintenance people, and as soon as we have a contractor that we pay over $10,000, we now have to put that out to bid as if it were a project, and that takes months. So right now, we're kind of going person to person. Luckily, the state just upped that cap to 20,000, which helps a lot. But yeah, there are a lot of good things going on, and this would just be, this would be an excellent program.
So I just have one quick question. I think this is great, no issues at all. I think the idea of kind of having kind of a guidance document on what you're doing, I think it would be important to have it on hand when you go to town meeting so that everyone understands that, but that's my only kind of,
Yeah, we're gonna have because our executive director is going to be handling all of the applications. Like I said, she's going to call or email me with Beth. She even wants to figure out, she can reach out to Stuart and try and get exactly, if he's got something that says, oh, this money's fine, but you just can't do this, she wants to know about it. We wanna preserve this.
I think because rental assistance is one of the allowed uses. We're not paying to renovate the apartments.
Yep.
We're paying for their deposit, or we're paying for their first month rent,
Yep.
and that's rental assistance. So I think this is a pretty cut and dried, easy, black and white
Yeah.
program.
And I do want to say and no one here is questioning this, but I do anticipate, not anticipate as in someone's going to say it, but there could be some people thinking like, oh, well, if something comes up and you pay their rent, what's to say that it's not, how can't they cover it? When your rent is fixed, your income's fixed. So something comes up, car, medical, family, these are the most vulnerable members of our town, and they can't just find that to cover it. So it's really important that we're putting this in place and very helpful.
Anybody else? Okay. So those are the 4 projects. So, any further discussion on these projects? Do I have a motion to approve? Let's start with, what?
Approve what?
The affordable, because it's just on the list. We'll start with
Get a motion and then ask.
the first Affordable Housing Trust, $20,000 request. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
I have a motion
Second.
and a second. Any discussion?
It's not, I don't think it's going to
It
the
says
housing,
trust, it should be
the
authority.
housing authority.
Yep, good catch.
It's very unfortunate,
Different.
the
No,
names.
it's, I know, it's like historical, anything in town, it's very confusing.
And then we'll have an opportunity to see the warrant language before,
We have draft language,
Mhm.
but I don't know if you've been watching him, he's been changing this whole
Well,
meeting.
there's been a few more points that were coming up in the
But we keep-
conversation that
we
need to
keep
be
tweaking
included, that
and-
were
Right.
not included, that were not in the draft.
so can we amend the motion to we're approving the project and we'll finalize the warrant language at a later date?
I think we're gonna do it tonight, aren't we?
Oh, I don't know that, that's what I'm
Well,
asking.
anyway, I think well, I moved it, so maybe I just said, okay, well, that must have been. that
In
must
my
have
mind,
been-
it made
That must have
sense.
been what I
In
moved.
the, in the past, it's, the language is always left up to the administrator, the treasurer, the chairman, and the town accountant.
No.
No.
In-
That we would approve it, and if they needed to tweak the language, it got tweaked.
In the past, we've had draft language that we approve as written with
But
the
before you were
treasurer.
on,
You know, since I've
we
been on,
did it differently.
since I've been on, we've had draft language that we approve as the committee for the language that's written. We only have the treasurer designate the fund if it's not already known at the time we've been doing the approval, and the dollar amounts if they're, with the town accountant.
Because
That's the
they're-
only things we've left to guess. We
You wanna
haven't
pass
let
out
the warrant
draft?
articles be just figured out.
Pass-
Agreed.
You
So
could
it's
pass out the draft
the
language.
information that we
and
don't
you
totally,
could note what.
No.
Yeah, the
needs to
the
be
exact
improved.
dollar
might
amounts, the
need to be
exact
adjusted.
fund.
that there's a little bit of flexibility
Yeah,
yet.
but otherwise, the language has been decided.
But the language, we're pretty restricted on what we can say, so it's not like there's anything magic. Because if we say something that's wrong, the town attorney will change it to make it legal.
there are
And the town
things in
accountant
our-
will change it to make it appropriate.
There are things in our purview to have in the wording, and we have made decisions as a committee in discussion since I've been on that has changed what has been in the draft on those words,
Yeah,
because we're not happy with it, at least some members were not happy with it.
Let's
We
take
have
a-
done that. That's why I would like the
Okay,
draft
so
for it.
did you get a copy? They're coming around.
Good point. It's, with the accelerated time schedule here, these warrants were kind of drafted a few minutes before the meeting started. And a few items have come up in the meeting that we need to include in some of them. So we can go through the 4 that we're speaking of right now.
So, this is,
The
Number
motion is
4.
for, okay.
Number 4.
I have no objections to the way that this article is written.
we'll give everybody an opportunity to read that.
Are you okay with the title of the,
Right.
Program.
How about the title of
Uh,
the
I-
fund?
Jim
I
Gallagher.
think just the Jim Gallagher Fund.
Right, this is saying Jim Gallagher Rental
Assistance
Assistance
Program.
Program. And so, well, it's for rental assistance, is it not? And I
Yes.
think you could call it the program for rental assistance, if that's what you want.
Yeah, I was just trying to short it for brevity, but,
We need to say rental assistance in this.
Yeah.
alright, so the Jim Gallagher Rental Assistance Program works fine then.
That's fine?
Okay, so a motion and a second. That was discussion. Any additional? All those in favor?
Aye.
Nobody's on
Roll
Zoom,
call.
so I don't need a roll call. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Declare the motion carried unanimously.
And just, my vote doesn't change for this question, but we were approving the warrant language as well in that vote?
Yes.
Okay, just making sure.
Baptist Church, which is, gonna flip it over, number 7.
And these numbers are the what can change later, right? Like if
Well,
the,
Let's make
actually, these
sure.
numbers here are good, because they match what's in the request, and they match what we've been talking about.
Yep.
So, as far as I know, the numbers in this are up to date.
great, but like if
Didn't-
by chance they weren't, that still has flexibility, right? The-
Right,
the
and if
num-
there's
But
any-
not at town meeting.
If there's technical corrections that need to be made, they get made between now and when they get submitted to
But-
the,
Tip,
But we can check these as we go.
John,
Yeah.
So the 65 is what was
typically,
requested, and
if
what
we
talked about.
expect changes might need to be made, we include in the motion that the treasurer and the town accountant can make those adjustments. Otherwise, we're voting exactly as is.
But if there's some technical mistake, like if, again, Ken has been, in the last 4 hours, dealing with changes from the state, because the state match has changed today.
So in
So,
those,
again,
in those, we'll say,
Yeah.
with numbers to be finalized by the treasurer and town accountant.
Yeah,
if necessary, if needed.
Yep.
whatever.
So
I
moved.
agree, by just adding a thing at the end of the motion, we cover ourselves.
Yes, because
I'm gonna say so moved.
Okay, so we have a motion for the Baptist Church column
Second.
restoration, and second, any,
I have a point, I'm
Discussion?
just noticing the sunset language, and it applies to all of these. It says that it's a majority vote to extend it.
yes.
My recollection is that it was actually a two-thirds majority that was recommended by town council. Whether or not we chose to go with majority or not, I don't recall. We'll have
I think it was majority.
Well, this is the same as
Colleen,
last year.
no,
This is the
Colleen.
So I watched that meeting when you guys were first doing that recently, and you definitely were saying 2/3, but then several warrant articles have said majority, and I was gonna bring that up at our sunset conversation later. But I think you're right, I think it is 2/3, and I think going forward, we should just operate in the right, and, it is what it is in the rears.
So should we make these 2/3?
I think we should make these 2/3.
Agreed.
And then also on this one, this is one of the numbers that did change from 65 to 70. The amount in the Baptist.
No, they're only asking for 65
Their
from us. They
project
were asking
total
for
is
60
70.
before.
Got it, my vote.
So, and this is just kind of a very technical question. When it's a 2/3 majority, it's the 2/3 of whoever's here. It's of the quorum, but it's not of the, that's why I'm asking the question.
It's
Which
of,
me-
yeah,
Yeah, so you could have a quorum and still not get 2/3.
right.
Okay.
So 2/3 of the membership is what you're.
Okay, and again, I'm just, my own clarification, I don't need to.
So what's the result of what you said?
Basically, if you have a quorum of a certain thing, you need to get to 2/3, the number of people that have to vote for it changes, and you have to do the numbers to
Right.
know if you're gonna actually have that.
I don't think extending sunsets will be super
It's always
controversial,
gonna have
but
to be
just,
6.
yeah.
yeah, but just
basically.
having the language correct is important.
Right, and I'm just generally asking the question, so
So,
I'm good.
Jack, do you
We'll
amend
add
your
the word
motion to
2/3
include the
before the
two-thirds
word
language?
majority
So moved.
on all of these.
And the second
Well,
agrees with
instead of
that?
majority.
Okay, one at a time. I've got 3 people talking. So
2/3 is,
Two-thirds
the
majority.
the warrant article for the Baptist Church is modified to say by a 2/3 majority. So I have a motion, amended motion. Do I have a second?
Second?
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Do we need to go back and officially correct
Yes.
the
I
housing
move that
authority?
we alter the previously voted warrant article for the Grafton Housing Authority's rental assistance program to mention the 2/3 majority as we just discussed.
So I have an amended motion,
Second.
if that's what it's called, in a second. Any further discussion?
Aye.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Okay, so we cleaned up that. Congregational Church, which is number 6. Do I have a motion?
I move that we approve warrant article 6, Congregational Church of Grafton exterior renovation.
With,
The
The
modif-
2/3.
Two-third
With
modification.
the modification of a 2/3 majority vote.
question, discussion.
Wait, I've got to get a motion and a second, then we'll discuss.
They've made a motion?
So I have a motion, do I have a
Second.
second? And a second, Sandy?
Discussion.
Do we have any discussion?
Somebody mentioned the word Rhino Shield
Right.
with respect to a restriction language in the in
I-
the warrant.
I think that should be a finding in the minutes, as opposed to in here, because,
I think it should be clear in
You
this
wanna-
that we're stipulating those funds on if they are or if we are satisfied with the warranty.
okay, all right, that's not kind of,
I didn't think it applied, I thought the decision was Rhino Shield was a non-issue.
It doesn't
The
matter
point was
since,
moot Because
Are
it
we
was
saying
all
because they're,
we're only funding restoration.
because we're doing restoration,
because of what they're raised on their end?
right?
Okay.
Because they've
They've raised
done
that
two
50.
separate,
They broke it
Um,
out into
yeah.
2 buckets,
Budget.
restoration and maintenance, and they're
And
only
I,
asking
and I
for
think it's
funding
also
on
important
restoration.
that what they raised covers that maintenance portion.
right?
All right, so then no stipulation.
Okay. So a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Declare the motion carried. Okay, Cisco is number 5, homestead restoration, and I think,
So with this one, there's a question of specifying that an accompanying historic restriction.
Yeah, that needs to be in there.
So
Anyone wanna-
I move that we approve warrant Article 5 as drafted with any discussion mentioned during, any changes mentioned during our discussion. So we can add that in, we can do the 2/3.
Without figuring out the language ahead
That's
of
the
time.
motion.
Second.
Thank you.
good night,
Thank you.
thanks.
Just for clarification, what's the historic restriction that you're wanting to put in there? Just brief,
I'm
you don't
not
have to
sure
get
what it is.
specific.
We
Oh.
have to have, the law requires that we have a legal interest in it. So either we literally have a legal interest by putting a preservation restriction.
Okay.
Does not have to be in perpetuity. With the Historical Society, the mechanism for that is the Historical Commission has to deem it historically significant for the town. So we had to go through that process when they did some things. We did conservation for some objects in the collection. Even though they own them, the town doesn't. As long as the Historical Commission designates that they are historically significant, then that passes the test. For like this, which is real estate, we need to have a legal interest. And so that's what this preservation restriction
Right.
is doing, is saying,
So it's just boilerplate language that gets put into these? Great.
There's gotta be some boilerplate language we gotta figure out. And
But-
there was one done, I don't know how many years ago, with their
15.
first one.
Yep.
And any land purchases have to have that in the warrant as well. So we have to figure out what that sentence is.
Okay, so you just go back and look at old warrants and it would be in
I
there?
think we can, yeah.
and I think that
We'll have to.
the language related to Kristen's question, which was that this will have, the guarantee is that we'll have public access, which we know they're gonna do, but it's just a formal, we have to have this
Yeah,
in
it
there.
was like a 2-page thing that we did the first time, and it seemed to satisfy
But we
everybody.
wanted to make sure it wasn't, that they're just gonna lock it up and they're gonna use it for their tribe, but that it's gonna be open to the public. And that's all that it basically is stating.
And if any project is going to meet those requirements, it's gonna be
Right,
this one.
and I think that's the whole goal of doing all of this, is they want to, because it's been locked up for years and going to dust, and they wanted to
The
get
first-
it to where it could be open to the public.
Yeah, the first one was in 2009. It was in May 2009. And but it was only for $30,000, so it was a very lightweight restriction. This is a little bigger, but we'll see. So, did we have a motion that we want to amend to anticipate language to require the
That's been
restriction?
made, I don't know if it was seconded. If
Or do you-
not, I'll second it.
I'm amend my motion to
Include
what Ken just said.
discussion items
Someone
that we're
second it?
talking about here,
Okay.
Second.
which I thought was a smart way to make the motion.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second that's been modified to add a 2/3 majority and to include language regarding a preservation restriction?
Yes.
Yes, yeah.
Yes?
And does it also include a public access?
That, I think that's what the preservation restriction will
Perfect, yep,
that's what that's all about.
okay,
Because we're trying to say if the town is paying for it, we want access for the town.
correct, it's.
So
yep.
that's the long and the short of, I mean,
Yep.
the short of a very long document.
2-page.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Declared. Motion carried unanimously. Okay. Go back to the top. You said the minutes that we have were in the packet last month. I don't know if you guys want to discuss those at tonight's meeting, or if you want to push them off till next month, because they were in last month's packet and not in this month's packet.
I'll admit, I read them after the last meeting, but then I forgot all about them and I forgot them since
Right.
they weren't in this
Plans
packet.
in 2019.
So
That was the fourth.
would you prefer then to wait and to put them in the packet for next month and have it all there
They don't
together?
go that far back
It'd
on
probably
the
be
list.
simpler.
Okay, so we will,
I
What
said,
about-
show me the Cisco's, and
April.
it showed me the four Cisco's.
What about
do
2016?
those in April.
It says May, spring 2009.
Yeah, but the 2016, the restore, need that for 2016.
Ken,
Excuse me.
your treasurer's report.
Oh, okay. I need to do a screen share.
It should pop right up when you do it, if you have the permission.
Do you have to say, I love how the packet's all linked and stuff?
So good.
Yeah,
I just,
well, that's good. It was very
just
easy to look
makes it-
things up.
makes it very easy. It's
Okay, I'm not-
really nice.
Okay, you're working on it.
I'm
over
working on it.
We're getting there.
You having fun yet, John?
No.
I'm out of practice over here. Here you go. That should allow you to.
Yay.
You got it?
Yep.
Perfect.
I've
Okay,
been in so
so,
many different places,
Maybe we
doing so
should
many
get
different
that.
virtual meetings, whether it's down in New Jersey or in
Oh,
the
yeah.
parking, on the
We
bike
should have
parking
that.
lot, because
Shut off that first set of lights.
going here
can
and
we
there.
turn some of these lights out?
Oh, yeah, can somebody do the middle? There you go, perfect,
Oh,
thank you.
That's good.
Okay, unfortunately, everybody can't see that very well. Okay, I've made a number of minor updates on this, particularly by adding further comments and explanations. If you look, I don't know if you can see it, but you can't see it, but over on the color code, there's an item there. It shows that a green font means the explanations and comments. I've added to those throughout. The material changes since last month. You may know that the coalition came out with an email a week or so ago, saying that the DOR was saying that there could be even less than last year. And so when I had met with Mary previously, but previous to last month, we decided to use the 21% from last year, but now they say it's less than that. So Mary and I got together again and we lowered it to 18%. And so that dropped the revenue estimate by a little bit. And so in blue, of course you can't see it, but the top 10 lines or so are show the 10% reserves, and those numbers are agreed with the town accountant twice, and there's $78,409 for each of the 10% reserves. There's there's the other typical funds in there, so that the budgeted reserve is going to be 464 and 864, which is quite a bit. Those will go into Articles 1 and 2, well, actually 1 and 2. And those are we have the right numbers now, so unless something changes in the next month or, between now and town meeting, those are going to be the right numbers. Okay, in the lines 14 to 17 are the some of the grants we're making. There's the Jim Gallagher Rental Assistant, $20,000. The Cisco Homestead Restoration, $194. Now, depending on what you guys are looking at over there, up until up until this meeting, the Congregational Church Exterior Restoration estimate was $140,000, but they dropped it by $20,000 a few minutes before the meeting started, and so if it says 140 in your copy, it's now 120. And so that leaves us with a budgeted reserve available for the fall of $130,800. Now, we've not used the undesignated fund at all, and that's got $400,000 in it. So that means that Together, they're, going into the fall, we have $530,000 available to grant, which is probably well more than enough. In the reserves, it shows the Grafton Common bond payment from the Historical Reserve, the Baptist Church, $65,000 from the Historical Reserve, and the Affordable Housing Trust. Now, we mentioned this last month. We're going to make a transition from transferring the 10% reserve at the end of the fiscal year to transferring it at the beginning of the fiscal year. And in the transition year, which is this one, there is effectively a double transfer. And so instead of getting about $75,000, they're going to get $150,000. And so that's a windfall. That's a good thing. Every once in a while, we discover that there's something we can change that makes an improvement, and this is one of those. So that leaves us with $800,000 to use. If all these things are approved at town meeting, we'll have $805,000 available to spend on pretty much anything in the fall. So in the green section, which you really can't tell, in the summary at the bottom, it just shows the sources and uses of our funds. And it shows that the sources of funds are those carried over from last year, which was $731,000. New funds from this year, $784, letting us begin the year with $1.5 million available. The bond payments are the uses of funds are the bond payments of $135, grants that we're approving now that total $551,000, expenses which will be less than that. So it's total uses of our money is $710,000, leaving the $805 again for the fall and years to come.
Awesome.
Wait, 710,000?
710,000 is the
Because it's
total
20,
grants.
the Congo reduced their
So
request
that-
by 20.
It's $20,000 more than that. No, excuse me.
Less.
That's why I'm
Spent
confused, 'cause
less
it's-
than, we're spending
It's
less than
less.
that because the 20,000.
That makes
right
sense. Okay.
Awesome.
I'll move that we approve the treasurer's report.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Declare the motion carried.
All right, and we still have
Okay.
some.
Now I'm having fun.
Can
So if you want to have some more fun,
I ask one question?
No.
Yeah.
If we've already
Okay.
closed the discussion, go
No,
ahead.
go
No,
ahead.
it's not on
I'm
the
teasing,
budget per
I'm
se.
teasing, I'm teasing.
On the Affordable Housing Trust, do we know how much they have? Because I know every year we give them, some of the money is
The trust,
allocated.
they
yeah.
have, I think it's like a 1.5 million
Okay.
total.
That's a good question for the next subject, if you want to well, again, you really can't see anything. Maybe we should wait until,
We're downstairs,
yeah, we're downstairs.
which is never guaranteed.
I really want to show you how to use the CPC project summary, and it's with the searchable fields.
The spreadsheet.
Because you could answer that question like that, just by clicking a couple of things, and it'll just tell you the answer to that question.
Did
That
we
would
put
tell us
on
how
the
much
agenda
money
itself?
we've given them, but not how much they've expended though, right?
That's correct. It's only how much we've transferred to them. And there were a couple of transfers early that were before they formed the trust, but you can say how many transfers went to the trust, and just click, and there, the answer will be right there.
Mm-hmm.
So,
And in the next
Okay.
meeting, April, May, it'll still be before town meeting, so
Yeah,
it won't be updated, but so,
and we do have more warrant articles to approve without being on the agenda yet, so, but it still follows through what we've just been talking about, and I think it's still fine. So, if the chair lets me, I will make a motion to approve, in our list, the second warrant article for the Pell Farm bond payment, the third warrant article for the CPC Grafton Townhouse bond payment, and those two for the moment, and allow the treasurer to have the authority to, with consultation with the town accountant, to modify the numbers in those bond payments if we need to.
so moved.
Second.
So we have a motion and a second for warrant Article 2 and warrant Article 3, but you didn't say warrant Article 1, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
I just figured those are separate
okay.
topics enough to be different
Okay, so
motions.
the two bond payments, Townhouse and Pell Farm. Are there any questions, comments?
These are just grants for
These are
projects we've
standard,
already
we have,
done.
this is, we have to pay, it's our bill.
Yeah, this is
And
the
it
amount
says
that
right
we-
in there,
we're
10th of 20
repaying.
These are
and
the amounts that we
16th
have
of
to
20,
pay.
so.
Repaying our bond.
But we only, this is the 16th of 20 on one of them, so we're getting to the end of it.
Almost. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Declared, both were
Sorry
carried.
to, just
Unanimous.
a quick
Yep.
question.
Yep.
Yes.
Where it says reserve for the, where it says sum of $72,500, and then it says 75,000. I mean, you already have in the motion, it can be updated.
Yes,
So I'm just pointing it out.
it's well worth pointing out, but it,
Good point. I always
Let's look.
thought that the idea of writing them out was stupid, but,
Let's see.
okay, just,
I'll also make a motion for warrant article
It
one.
says-
our res-
Wait,
oh,
it's 75,000 on your line item 51,
correct.
so we just need to correct that to 70.
Yeah, and it's already in the motion, so.
My motion already included allowing the treasurer and the town
Yep,
accountant to update
But
it.
just so that,
Yep.
I've got it corrected. Thank you.
And I'll make a motion for warrant article one on our list, the CPC reserves,
Okay.
to approve as drafted, allowing the treasurer and town accountant to make adjustments as required.
So moved.
I have a motion and a second. Do I have any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Declare the motion carried unanimously.
And
Okay, so
Ken, warrant article 8 on our list, is that
Number
number
8.
accurate, or do we need to allow for a modification?
8 is accurate.
I think that's right.
Okay, so I'll move that we approve warrant article 8 for inclusion in town meeting, the CPC Affordable Housing Trust transfer, as we previously discussed, and as drafted.
Second.
I have a motion and a second.
The only question I have is, because it is different this year, is it worth including any kind of, you know,
Language.
yeah, I don't know if it
To
is.
answer that, I would suggest that we provide a sentence for the select board member to read,
The language
to
that
explain.
is relevant is what the finance committee would say, because all of these, it'll say the warrant article, and then the finance committee will explain it away. So that's, to me, where that language needs to come.
Okay.
Because they're saying, we approve this because,
Yeah.
and so we need to make sure that we put it in there, this is a double payment because we are changing the way we transfer this payment.
Okay.
Does that sound?
Yeah, so
That's
the
right.
finance committee could
Fair.
say it, could put it in their
Changing the
description.
timing of it.
Because then it's not cluttering up the warrant article.
Mhm.
I mean, it's, I get what you're saying, but I think, and they do write their little paragraph on every one, so.
My- Yeah,
Just make
my
sure.
bottom line is that we do let the people that come know why it's that high, one way or the other, whether it's the finance committee's blurb, or if we,
Because
or if the select board says something, or we say something, whatever.
But it doesn't
after
need to
that
be in the
release-
warrant.
that
Yes,
Ken
nothing to
and
do with
I
it.
will be before the finance committee. and-
Exactly.
We'll make sure that we
They will
we
get
give
that.
them that.
Because hopefully they will notice.
Yep.
There's a big
I-
jump.
Either way, it'll be communicated to the town meeting body.
Yes.
Okay. Any other questions? Good point. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Hearing none, declare the motion approved unanimously. Okay, so that was the most important thing for tonight to get done, was that. Okay, next item is the sunset. I don't know if we want to do a sunset, that we want to discuss the policy, that we didn't always have a policy, that at one point we decided there was money languishing, that projects were languishing, that they were holding funds that could be returned back and spent on other projects. And so that's why we initiated a sunset policy. There is no sunset policy in the act. There is no requirement. There's no language that says you can't do it. So I think, you know, if you want to talk about it, and I don't know if Paul, you want to talk
Yeah, I'll
about
take
it?
it.
Because, you know, do we want to continue with it? Do we want to say it's more trouble than it's worth? As, you know,
So personally, I think we should continue with it, but I think we need to have a policy explaining how we're doing it, because we haven't handled all sunsets the same. So I think we just need to spell out how we're handling sunsets and the right way we want to continue doing it so that, you know, going forward, everybody's on the same page.
And we've even, some sunset policies are 2 years, but then we've had other policies that have been 3 years because we knew there were big projects. So it's not always a 2-year policy. I mean, there might have been one.
But that's how you can, the language is gonna be broad enough that it gives us flexibility, but also it's written somewhere so we know what we're doing.
Okay.
So, I agree, we need to have a written policy, first of all. I mean, we had a prime example of it tonight because we didn't have 2/3 majority written in there, because we didn't have it written down.
Just copied what we did last year.
We need to clarify what the intent is of the sunset window, clearly, because there's confusion on that, particularly when funds are encumbered on a project. And then we also need to talk about, you know, we made a change in the whole process for extending a sunset, where we can now vote on it as a committee rather than having to go to town meeting. And on the surface, that seems to have us having more control. It narrows the amount of people that are voting on it. And if it's a 2/3 majority, if you do have a project that was perhaps, you know, approved by a bare majority, if we then as a committee have to approve it as being extended, that could get messy. You know, if it was a town meeting, the folks that are on the project could go out and try and bring in people to vote. They don't have that option here. The vote is who we have. So that's another element I think we need to talk about. And then, you know, the role of the representative from this committee on those projects, what their role is, what the intent of it is, and how that, you know, plays a part in the sunset. And the purpose of the sunset, which is to make sure that a project isn't just sitting there holding money and not moving forward at all. You know, the representative is there to make sure that that's moving forward and keeping the committee aware of what's happening, of reviewing the funding to make sure that what they're asking for us to pay out of CPA funds is actually things that we can fund. So, I mean, those are some clear aspects of their role. So I think we need to include that in that discussion as well. So I agree with Colleen, we do need to talk about all of that.
So I have a thought to what Paul was concerned with. If, let's say, for whatever reason, it didn't pass a vote here, or any action there too, we take it to town meeting. If for some reason CPC, and we just have that in the policy, if the sunset extension fails the vote at CPC, it is then taken to town meeting. It doesn't die. We don't have the authority to take away something that town meeting has already approved. So it gives us the authority to keep things moving and keep it easy, but on the ones that are hard, it's going to town meeting. We shouldn't supersede town meeting's will ever. That's my recommendation, but I don't know how everybody else feels.
I just wrote this up really fast. If we're able to make our own policy. The CPC reserves the right to apply a sunset provision on projects of varying duration at the time of approving a project. This sunset provision may be extended by a 2/3 majority of the CPC members. If the vote fails, town meeting will vote to extend. That sound broad and good?
Again, that leaves out the situation where a project is actually moving forward. So the feedback that we got from both the town accountant and town council back in 2021, when we went to that, is when a project is encumbered, and that means, you know, monies are being expended. Now, on a big project, you know, that's a town project, and you look at the townhouse as an example, the town was signing a contract. So once they had hired a contractor and signed that contract, the funds were considered encumbered. And encumbered mean that the sunset provision no longer applied. Because you can't have a situation where we've agreed, or, you know, the town has signed a contract to move forward with a project, and then have town meeting or this committee decide to not fund it anymore. And then you have an unfunded mandate, and it leaves the town in a really precarious situation.
Because that's, not to interrupt you, but to interrupt you, that we talked about that for bonding. That was our concern. What happened? Because at one point, there were people that wanted to get rid of, a few years ago, get rid of CPA in Grafton. And if that were the case, we could get rid of it, but because we have bonds, CPA in Grafton would continue till those bonds are paid off, regardless of, the money's been encumbered, more or less.
Okay.
So can I'm just gonna jump in
Can
on
I
that real
finish my
quick.
thought, though,
Yeah.
please? So, while the example I gave you is a big project, the rationale applies to smaller projects too, where the town isn't signing a contract. Say, you have a small project like the Unitarian Church, and they've gone and hired an engineer to do the design work. But that design work, we don't know about, and we decide, all right, we're not going to extend the sunset window. Well, now they're left holding the bag for a contract, and they have no funding. We just can't do that. And that's really the role of our representatives on these projects, to keep us informed, to make sure that those projects are moving forward. And if we have concerns about it, that we address that with them. Not that we bring projects that are already encumbered back onto the floor to decide whether or not we're going to enforce the sunset provision or we're going to extend it.
So
By
before
calling-
that
What's next?
leaves that thought, I want to stay on the encumbered train. So I'm going to talk about the Common Restoration Project, because that's an example of where a contract was issued and some funds were encumbered, but the whole warrant article wasn't. $300,000 were encumbered with a contract, which left the $350,000 in jeopardy, and I don't want to do that going forward, because one contract does not encumber the full amount, it just encumbers the contract. So a bond payment, for example, that whole bond is now encumbered, but not, anything else that would have to go with it. So I see where the benefits of encumbered funds, yeah, you're gonna be responsible for those bond payments. However, you don't wanna split it up where you've jeopardized part of a warrant article, like the Grafton Common Restoration. And that was, as Paul said, you had 4 sunsets that year, you brought 3 to town meeting, and you specifically didn't bring that one because you were nervous town meeting might vote it no. And I don't think we should be doing that either. So I think language around how to properly handle warrant articles with encumbered funds, but maybe not have it be the main method of funding them. If we have the ability to extend a sunset, always extend the sunset. That's just, I think, would make sense.
Can
Go ahead.
I want to address that,
But
but it's a
can
direct.
can you decide? Do you want Paul or you? It's like you
Is it
decide.
not the purpose of the sunset, so that we can close off dead projects that are not going anywhere?
That's the goal.
Yeah, we can always
Just dead
vote.
projects that, seemed like a good idea at the time, but whoever wanted to do them got the money, but decided not to do them. And the money just sits there, and we needed a way to get the money back without having to go to town meeting. And so that's why the sunset provision's there. It's not to have to just, stop a project in the middle for any reason.
No, but it is an automatic thing. It doesn't require an additional step. So the mechanism that's being chosen to help with bring those funds back also adds that level of, we gotta stay on top of them, because we're implementing this mechanism. We can't just leave it out there to flounder.
Which is the role of the representative. And to go back to your comments, so part of the discussion we had in 2021 was that very thing, whether or not you're only encumbering the contracted amount or if it's the entire amount of funding. And a prime example of why it has to be the entire funding is because there are things that are part of a project that aren't part of that main contract with a general contractor. One item, and then actually this one does involve them, is with regard to contingency funds. Those are not part of the contract that we sign with the general contractor, but we need to have those funds available in case they find something that we weren't inspecting, and now we are needing to pay more money. There are other parts of projects, you may have a general contractor going to the Common as an example. Yes, we had a general contractor. We also needed to hire an arborist. So, there were additional expenses there. There was money needed to remove the telephone poles. That was a contract that had to be signed with a different vendor. So there are a number of things that come up, and that's why the town accountant and town council, again, were both in agreement that all the funds are encumbered once that contract is signed. The project is now live, it's moving forward. You don't sit there and say you're gonna pull back on something that's moving forward, and that
But
goes
for
to
that
Ken's point.
example, for the town commerce station, the project hadn't gotten live, it hadn't moved forward yet. On the actual warrant article, it just said June 2021. It didn't even give June 1st or June 30th like it typically does, which left a lot to question. And that contract was voted on June 1st, 2021. So I think it was risky to do it that way, and I think our policy needs to take the risk out. Make it so that all these projects stay safe and not go and take a risky approach that could potentially harm the project.
Whether it said June or specified the full date, the fact of the matter, it's based on the town's fiscal year, so it's through June 30th. And we were already encumbered prior to that because we had hired Graves Engineering the year before to work on the plans that we needed to move forward with that project. So the funds were actually encumbered long before June of '21. They were encumbered shortly after they were rolled out for the project.
So, Justin, and then Sandy.
So my understanding is literally that only the funds that are part of the contract are able to be considered encumbered. If there is town council correspondence, I have never seen it, even when we had the
That's,
discussion.
it's in the packet.
The town
It's like a
council
whole
correspondence?
string of emails.
I saw a string of emails. I didn't see town council emails.
Yeah, I definitely didn't see that. In tonight's packet, explaining sunsets?
So I did not send them. I do have the correspondence.
I
could-
requested those from you, and you had them?
I have them. I have them. I found them since I talked to you because I had a feeling that I would need them.
So yes, if we had town council opinion that says that the entire project is encumbered as soon as it's.
I'll send them right
you know,
now.
As soon as the first contract is signed, then that is very useful information. That's different from what I've looked up and tried to do some research on. That said, whether it's encumbered or not, if we have a sunset that we can extend, we should just extend it. I find it really hard to believe that even a project that is very decisive, indecisive with a town at town meeting, and it's like a one vote difference and it passes, that this committee, no matter who the makeup is, if the project has started and contracts are signed and the project is in process, that anybody in this committee wouldn't be in favor of extending the sunset because the town said they wanted the project and the town was happy spending the money for the project. Why would this committee stop it?
So, from my perspective, very obvious a policy's needed. And even though I loved your simple policy, it ain't gonna cut it. I mean, it's just because what is the intent of it? What is it that, it's a policy. So we wanna have some guidelines on, the intent of it and the intent of doing the sunset and the intent of, why we would actually ever use it is because something was never done or something. So I think that policy needs to be done, it needs to be checked with town council.
Well, yeah, certainly, but I usually, in writing policy for other boards, we don't usually write our intent within the actual language of the policy.
Well, it's a policy.
Yeah, you write out the outlines and what it regulates and what it pertains to, but you don't attach the minutes of the discussions that were had.
No,
These
no,
are
no, no,
important
no,
for
no,
this.
but when I say what the intent is to give the flexibility of, of the CPC to, enforce the sunset if a project has been, if it has never been started, whatever that, thing is. And then to, give guidance, it's a policy, it's guidance, that, when to do it and when to go to town meeting. So to me, it's like, put it in big buckets, and it's up to us to figure those buckets out. But I would much rather have some input from town council,
Well,
because
certainly,
once you start talking, yeah.
I wasn't gonna email this in and say, we're done.
No, but I just think it's a little bit, I mean, I love simplicity, but,
I think these are the general bullet points of what it needs to. It needs to have our ability to apply a sunset provision at the
Yep.
beginning of a project. It needs to have the 2/3 majority vote to extend it. It needs to have, if that fails, town meeting gets to the opportunity to
I
extend
don't
it.
disagree with any of that.
And
but-
then I think it needs to have language as to what happens when that sunset is passed, where does that money go, what are the followings, and I just think an off point in this discussion, all of these facts are very important, but it is important to remember that in this policy we are trying to write, it is going to have, like Justin just said, an ability for us to say, we can extend this. We see the work that's being done. We know that this isn't just gonna go to nowhere, we can extend this.
Let me throw this out, let me interrupt.
Okay.
Why don't we just not have a sunset policy? I don't think it's worth this amount of angst
So
for
let
the
me
projects
just
that are
ask-
moving along that.
So,
Go ahead,
so there was a reason why it was put in. So has
And I
that
honestly
reason
don't
gone?
remember that a specific project that this was for. Does,
So I can respond to your question.
Yep.
Stuart Sagamore recommended that we have a sunset policy if we're gonna use sunsets. That's why it's on the agenda.
no, I'm saying get rid of it.
Get
Just
rid of sunsets?
Sunsets, yes.
And so my
I'm
question
saying
is,
it's a level of red tape and bureaucracy that we probably don't need because it's not even in the act.
and again, we have it in there because of some reason. So
That's
is
what I'm
that-
saying. I don't remember the project that drove it. Do you,
How many
Paul?
projects
yeah, we had to
have
go to
required an
Sunset
extension?
started, I think, because the very first project that we had with town meeting had none, and the fund sat there for a long time.
And
I think, but that was
we
before my
went to
time.
town meeting a couple times to do it. It was a real pain in the ass for projects that
And we
needed
had-
to- for
we've
which
had
it
multiple
needed-
discussions.
it
One
needed to be
person at a
killed.
time.
Thank God, that's the difference.
And we had to go to town meeting to do it, and it was a real pain.
So,
And
yes.
We've had multiple discussions since I've been on the committee on the angst that not having a sunset on the gravestone project has caused us.
But that's $10,000.
But
That's
it might
still-
not be.
No, so then. let's-
$10,000, what if it's
if-
$100,000?
If you
on
want to
the
get rid
project?
of it, then we'll just
Yes.
get rid of it.
All right, well,
Yeah.
let's just do a quick straw poll. Who would like a policy? And then we'll continue the conversation. If a majority of us don't want a policy, then we don't need to waste our time.
Okay.
So if you want a policy, raise your hand.
Since I'm the chairman, I'll go ahead and take this on.
Yeah.
If you'd like to continue to have a policy and create a written policy to go with it, please raise your hand in favor of
So
having.
you're saying keep the sunset?
That we will have a sunset policy and we will develop a written policy to go along with it.
Yeah,
If
okay.
that's, if you would like.
Yeah.
1, 2,
I think if you're gonna have it, you gotta have it.
3. No, I'm just saying the concept. I'm saying, do you want to continue to have a sunset policy? Which would
Include sunset in.
language in all the warrant articles.
So far, we've had a policy, but we haven't had a written policy. So the question is, if we have a policy, we need a written.
We will
policy.
We've got confusion because of that.
We'll have
Correct. So
do
I-
you want to
okay.
continue with a sunset policy and develop a written policy to go along with it?
Okay.
Raise your hand.
Yep.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
I would be in favor of removing the sunset altogether, only if we then had a policy saying when we could retract funds from something.
I
So
don't know if you can do it
we-
without a
we can't.
sunset.
Which is why I would say we have to have it. If there's no ability for us to say, we gave X project $200,000, it's been 5 years, they've done nothing.
And the
And we have
main,
no
yeah,
policy, we need to then write another policy that says we can take that money back.
Right.
So if we
So,
already have language that
I
says.
think that begs the question, that I did talk to Stuart for half an hour today about this and didn't discuss, ask the next question of, so since most towns don't have this, how do they then get projects completed that are languishing? So even though it looks like people are in favor of this, I will still ask him that, just as because obviously everybody else in the state is surviving without this.
Yeah.
But
Not
how are they doing it, is what I'm, if he has any insightful information,
Yeah. And my,
just for my own.
and my only fear with, if we say, all right, no more sunset, scrap it, and then we have a project and we just hypothetically write a policy that says, if 2/3 agree that this project is not progressing, then 2/3 can say, are we taking the money back? God forbid, all of a sudden,
yeah, I just-
someone goes, oh, I want to stop this. I'm not saying anyone would do
And I don't
that,
think we're
but
the only community using sunsets. They just don't have, best practices around it.
But
Other
I don't
com-
think there are many that do.
That's maybe
That's a
true, but
question,
just
yeah.
because we are, this is what we should do.
Yeah, clearly they're needed.
And I'll say I'd be open to the idea of not having a sunset if we have a clear answer on how we could
I would
take
agree with
things
that.
back.
I
and
would agree with
then we
that.
could open to the idea, but for everything I know right now, I think we need a sunset.
Because honestly, the question is, do we write a policy about the sunset, or do we write a policy about how do we retract funds? And if we've already got language used in the past about, you know, sunset, but the problem was we didn't have the policy, we've already got the language, so.
Right.
So I'm having problems from my cell phone sending the email trails that I have, but I'll do it from my laptop, forward them to you.
Yeah.
Okay, so straw poll said that we want to continue with sunset.
And
I
write,
can't see what time it is. It's almost 9 o'clock. I don't know if we want to continue this conversation next month and then appoint a ad hoc committee to develop it, or
I
what are
think-
people's thoughts?
I think that's a perfect idea.
And I will ask, in the meantime, Stuart, how do other communities without sunsets complete projects, or how do they prevent money from languishing?
Or have towns just lost money because something's sitting there and no one's doing anything because the interested party isn't
Yeah, because
interested?
I don't think all towns' CPCs are as active and engaged as ours. Like, I know other towns where they have $8 million just sitting out there because they don't know what to do with it. They don't have any mechanism to get it going, and that's crazy to me.
Yeah, I think,
God, yeah.
I think
Yeah.
our homework is, for next meeting, everyone should bring,
Yeah.
this is what I think it should say. We put the committee together.
Or we can just
Write it,
send
we
our
approve it.
thoughts to Beth. She can compile them into, or John. That looked like, yeah, we can send our thoughts to somebody who can compile it, and then we can pick it apart next time.
Yep.
It seems like an easy way to do it too.
Excellent.
Okay. Right,
The
so we'll-
the caveat to say explicitly, I think we run a risk of open meeting issues if everyone's sending it to another committee member.
if you're, no,
Fair.
you're sending it to Beth.
Everybody send it to
If
Beth.
Beth is
everyone's sending
all,
it to Beth, that's great.
all Beth is gonna do is compile.
Yep. I'm happy with Beth. I just was saying if we're doing someone other than Beth for,
I mean, I'm happy for you guys to, it's fine to share it, and so that you're not saying everything that everybody else is saying, but
discussed.
we're not gonna discuss it.
No
It's-
deliberation.
Right, it's, right, okay. So,
Motion to adjourn?
No, not even
Oh,
close.
well, I didn't know.
There's so
once
much
there's a
more,
motion to
sir.
adjourn,
We're not even halfway done. Buckle up.
Not even halfway.
I was getting that look.
you're
I've seen
getting the
that look.
Jim Gallagher.
I've seen that look, yes.
Vibe going on. Okay, so we've discussed sunset. Is there has anybody heard any update on the Grafton, Upton land price?
The appraisal?
question though, we have sunset policy discussion, which I thought we were just doing. Do we need to do a sunset extension for those?
The town records archival project is one that we vote internally. That's,
Yes,
so we do need to discuss that and decide. Do we have a motion to extend that the sunset?
So moved.
So I do have a question about that.
I do too.
Okay, just a second. So I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
how long are we extending it for, is probably the
Well,
biggest
that's
question.
not my question.
That
Well,
was,
also
that
there's
was one of the projects.
2 articles. Which are we extending?
Well, this is strictly town records archival project. That's the 2 pieces.
But there were 2 articles that are in this project that are
Breaking them out,
both
I think.
getting expired in June. One was for
Uh,
13, one was for 5.
Are they both still alive?
Yeah, these are all my questions. Which one are we extending, and where are we every time it seems like candy?
Yeah, she had expended all the funds in the older one, and that's why we
We-
created the second
we-
one, so it should only be
Just like
funds
with
in one.
the Grafton Housing Authority, we just replenish. She'll
Yeah.
say, okay, all that money's gone. I need $10,000 more, 15,000 or 20, depending on
No,
whatever.
We actually made them have a new one,
I was
and
gonna say, it doesn't look like that.
there were 2 separate ones. So one was done,
Yeah,
and then we made her do a new one.
yeah, so it looks like we're only extending whichever one is
The
still
new-
alive.
The
It's
most-
the new one.
Recent one.
I'm gonna assume the new one is the one with more money, or,
No,
What are the
less.
names of those projects?
The town records archival project, which may or may not be,
Article
exact-
28 in, these are, here are the motions for them right here if you want them.
Town records restoration. trying to see if I can find them all.
So this goes back to the policy issue that we were just discussing. Do we-
And this is one of the ones, again, sorry to interrupt, was that this should never have a sunset, because as long as there's a town clerk, we're gonna have a project. They're gonna continue to have books that are 50 years old today, but in 10 years, they're gonna be 60 years old and falling apart. So this is not a beginning and
So-
ending project, but, so,
So in this case, we would elect to not apply a sunset provision
I mean,
onto a
and
program.
that could be part of the policy, that we
I-
can choose
But
not to have a
it has
policy.
one.
That's what I'm saying,
This
that's
one
why we're
does.
here now.
But in future, we could say, we don't wanna have one.
Or we could say there's no need to extend it, the funds are encumbered because she's got contracts with the binder.
But does she have contracts for the whole amount? Is the
She doesn't
problem.
have all of it, she does it piecemeal.
Cause she only does,
That's
She has an ongoing.
But that relates to the earlier conversation. My other opinion too on that point is that I think we should have, if we're having sunsets, we should have it for everything, if we can change it internally especially. But that's, circling back to an earlier agenda item, I think we should keep moving forward on this one in particular. Let's identify which article we're actually extending and for how long we're extending it for,
Yeah.
and then vote.
So in that
I would
light,
vote the opposite.
so Paul, is that, so there were two, one in 2020, one in 2021, and one was 5,000, one was 13,000. Is the first one fully used? Is that fully expended?
That's what he
Is
just
that
said.
the 13 or the 5?
The 5 was the first one.
That was my understanding why we did the second one, because they were out of funds.
I think she had a project that encompassed all of that 13, cause that's a
That's
weird
what I
number,
recall.
the 13,000.
In this case, and just decide,
So
if we are gonna apply a sunset on everything, we can
So
change
this
the
is where you
duration.
check the
So if we say
accounts
this is something that's just gonna
This-
go,
Yeah, I like to look at the data bank too. The data bank has so much data on there on the
Yeah.
CPA that I look at, but yeah, I mean,
So does the accountant's reports show these two? They do.
yes.
Do
So
they show the money in both of them?
I don't have it off the top of my head, but for ease of tonight, does it hurt to extend both sunsets? So can we just take a motion to extend both of the town records archival projects?
I'm looking to see, so.
I think it creates confusion, and perhaps someone will say, well, a precedent.
Okay,
that
historic town
we're
records.
Doing it, so I hesitate to move forward with it.
This
that way.
says there's $13,000 there, so the 5,000 is gone as of 2/29.
but
If I'm
all,
reading it correctly.
but all 13 is still in that other one?
That's what it says, is there's 13,000 beginning and ending.
So the 13,000 was approved first, the 5,000 was approved second. So if the statement of the 13,000 if the first money was expended, the 5,000 was the second amount.
Let me see if I can find, because
So
again,
that was June
they enter
2020.
this the way they
and October
enter it,
2021
and we've
is
had
when these were
multiple town
approved.
accountants enter it, so it's not always
Yeah, the
consistent.
database I'm looking at, it might be wrong, but it has them in the other order.
It is confusing.
In our project spreadsheet, Colleen,
Just pull up the town meeting.
we
minutes.
have number 103, which is town record restoration, town records preservation, 2020 annual town meeting, Article 28, $5,000. And then the next one we have is number 111 on our spreadsheet, which is, where's my line now? 2021 fall town meeting, Article 5, and that's 13,000. So that's the second one.
Okay,
This is the only thing, and I would say if there's money in the account, it would be here, and there's nothing else listed
So the
on
first-
this
the first one's
229
Done.
statement, the ledger.
yeah, so I'm looking,
Photograph at our last meeting,
I'm looking
of-
at the 2020 warrant,
I sent it.
and it's
and that was
5,000.
this project?
Okay, so that's.
So this gets to the point of, the sunset provision was intended to ensure that if a project was languishing, that we had a mechanism to get funding back.
Yes.
This project isn't languishing at all.
No.
And she's encumbered funds because she's already done some of the work with the funding. With the binding that was done, I sent you guys photos of that last month. So I understand the logic of saying, well, we don't know, so let's just do it, but I also don't want to say, or hear, like, in the future, that that's a precedent now, that
So-
we've done that, and
so-
so now every project, because
Oh, I'm not
I
so
don't
wor-
agree with it.
Yeah, I don't so worry about as setting precedent over a discussion item like this, but in general, if we quote, extend them both, we are extending them for a time determined, right?
Yes.
So, you know, you could extend the 5,000 to after our next meeting, so we can figure out what's going on, which is right, which is wrong. And then the other one, we know that there's no money spent so far, you can extend it, whatever.
And we haven't, these don't expire until, where's my line?
June 2024.
Yeah, June 30th of 2024.
So that's this year.
We don't have to, if we don't have to take a vote on that tonight if we really don't want to.
Okay, I guess,
Doesn't go to town meeting, so.
Yeah, I apologize if this is a dumb question, but if one of the warrants has, all of the money has been spent, do we need to extend?
no, then we would just let it go.
Yeah, that's what, I think that
We
would.
just
make
want to
sense.
confirm that it's accurate.
Right,
Yeah.
so we have two different pieces of information, and to Justin's point, we have the time to do it right.
And this is exactly how that policy would function. We look, we know that progress is being made, regardless of the fact that all the funds are there. We know that this is
It's
a
an
part of the regular
ongoing thing
routine.
that's been,
So
yeah.
if we put this to a vote, I'm gonna guess we'd get the 2/3 majority. So this is kind of a
Yep.
microcosm of how this will work in the future.
And
But again, it begs the question of, you know, putting a project in potential jeopardy by requiring a vote on it when funding has already been encumbered.
Yeah, and that's why I would say, if we vote to extend this, or when we approve this project, we wouldn't set a 2-year sunset. We would extend, we would set that date, this will sunset in
We could make it a 5-year.
4 or 5 years.
Yep,
Like,
yep.
we're giving this project a ton of leeway, because we know they're gonna get this done.
So,
Or we make a
Yeah.
we make a determination that a project has been encumbered and label it as such. And then we rely on
That's-
our representative to make sure that the project is moving forward and keeping us informed. And if not, then they, as a commission, we discuss it and we decide whether or not we want to have a sunset provision
Okay, I
placed
think-
on it so that we can close out. And then it could be next week,
Whatever.
it could be a month.
you decide as chair.
Okay, you can go, and then you go.
Thank you. So, Paul, I understand you're really passionate about the encumbered funds point of view. My point of view on that is that it's just riskier and it's a lot cleaner to just extend it. And I think as far as your narrative of it puts a project in jeopardy, that's kind of acknowledged why adding the sunset to begin with. Nobody's trying to put anything in jeopardy, and it's really just designed to be able to get monies back if we need it. We all go in there with the idea that it's going to be extended, especially if town meeting approved it. And if by some weird chance it doesn't pass the test here where it's a 2/3 vote, then it goes to town meeting. So it has two opportunities. I don't think any projects are in jeopardy, and I just don't feel comfortable going the encumbered route when there's an easier, cleaner path.
Okay,
We
so,
already have a precedent in town of encumbered funds.
And we have a president doing the other way too, extending them.
No,
So
we
what-
have,
Oh, yeah.
we
all
have
the-
written town council opinion and town accountant opinion that was applied for the townhouse project, it was applied for the Grafton Common project, and just the whole precedent of, you know, putting someone's funding at risk, because it is putting it at risk.
Can I comment, Paul, please?
Yeah, certainly.
So, my strong opinion is that we need to follow the sunset provision that process we've already had so far. As far as the encumbered piece is saying putting something at risk, I think if we have legal opinions saying that once something is encumbered, it is going to be paid, even if we exercise our sunset, if the encumberdness says that the project will be finished, then that would take precedence over it anyway. If that is actually the, you know, what the town accountant, you know, says. Like I said, I haven't read what you,
Yeah,
what
well,
you've
you
seen
haven't
yet,
had it to
but,
see.
you know, if
And we have
that's,
a history of going to town meeting and extending
Yeah.
sunsets on
And-
projects that are like already going through. So there's a history of it doing it both ways. Once encumbered with the town
Right.
Grafton, but way more doing it, getting the vote. So I
Agreed.
think it's just cleaner doing the vote.
Okay, I just.
Agreed, there's confusion.
Jack.
I want to make a comment about what Paul said. I think I see exactly what you're saying. I apologize, I didn't see it clearly. You want there to be something in this writing that says, say we put a 2-year sunset on it, and that, you know, and then a contract is signed for half of it, and they are making clear progress. You want there to be a mechanism for us to say, take that sunset off, they're clearly going to be able to get this done. We see that they're making progress. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, just have it labeled in our project list as encumbered instead of keeping the sunset provision.
Okay.
on. That's what's causing the
I would
confusion.
think the one thing that and I've written 2 questions that we need to have answered by the town accountant and the town attorney is, how are legally, how are town funds encumbered and who can encumber them? Can we just say encumbered and it happens? Because usually with the town accountant's office, you have to fill out a purchase order and that's what encumbers funds.
Yes.
Or you get a contract and that's what encumbers the funds. Are there other ways legally that can be done? So that we need to get a lot of questions answered. This policy is gonna take a while to develop.
But Paul, I completely see that point of
Yeah.
view. I see.
I'll send the email trail so you guys have.
And one thought I have here is that if things are encumbered just from the first contract sign, you just think about this for a second. We issue a project $500,000, whatever. They spend $50,000 with Graves Engineering, and then they decide not to move forward with anything else, but they still have the money. And we have a sunset. Now they're not moving forward. They're not making any signs of moving forward. We can't get that back if everything is encumbered.
Yes, we can.
Yes, we can. We can-
If I ask you, Justin, you decided not to move forward with your project, do you agree to turn back the funds?
But I say no.
Yes.
I say no, I
Okay,
want
so
to
if
hold
you
on
have,
to it.
if you say no, that's a problem. But if you say yes, we're not gonna do this.
Yeah.
Then the money goes back. But if you say no, then we've gotta figure out how to, wine and dine you to get you to say
Yeah, I don't,
yes.
Justin, I don't think Paul's saying if I've got a $500,000, I encumber 10,000, then I don't think Paul's saying then the whole thing then gets.
I think
He
that is
did
what
say
he's
that.
saying. That is
He said
exactly what he's
that
saying.
with using Graves Engineering with the
So,
town
yeah,
common.
That is what town council and town council
So-
agreed
so-
with,
That's
because
what
I
I'm-
gave an example. So if you go with just the contract amount, so say, you know, the project's for $400,000 and we have a contract for 100,000, or say it's 200,000, that doesn't include contingencies. So obviously, you're not gonna enter into a project without any contingency funding, because if it comes up and you don't have the funding, then you're SOL. So to say it was just the contracted amount, that was the specific question that came up in 2021 that we addressed with the town accountant and town council. And again, those were big projects that we talked about it. We didn't talk about it specifically on the smaller ones. I'm expressing the thought that the same logic can be applied to them, but that is a little bit more murky, because that isn't what we talked about.
I think then in that case, we could probably put a quote-unquote cap. If you've encumbered X amount, that only covers X amount.
Yeah.
And I think that that's not the case in your project, but in the future it can be. But I think we've gotten out of the scope. We had a motion and a second.
Just to delve into that for a second more. So, you know, you have a project like the Common. That wasn't just the general contractor. Yeah, that was the biggest piece of it, but you also had contracts in order to move those wires that were above ground. There was a contract for the arborist that we needed. There was work for the, I'm trying to remember what it was, backflow
Yeah, right.
backflow preventer.
Preventer, yeah,
There was
for
work
water.
with that we had to do with the town. So there are a lot of ancillary things beyond the main contract. And the fact of the matter was, with that project, it came in under bid. We were able, within the scope of the project, to go back and encumber more funds for the, making the accessibility of the BS.
Exactly. And that's why, with that example, there is no doubt in my mind, all of us would say, yep, keep going right ahead.
Right.
But I would, not to say we're all gonna quit next week, have a whole new CPC committee, but that's why putting a policy, the policy has an intent up front. It's like, it's to give guidance, and, yeah.
Right,
Obviously,
because
there's a lot
Paul,
of
Paul, if
confusion.
something happened to you, no one would have that correspondence with town council. I
Actually, in the correspondence, Joanne Duncan said she was putting it in the record, so it should be there.
but I looked
and-
for it and I couldn't find it, so I'm just
And I
saying,
don't know why she didn't put it there, but she was involved in the conversations. I believe John was, Evan was, town council was.
I hear
and-
you, but
and the
I'm gonna
town-
finish now. I'm gonna finish now.
Yeah,
If something happened to you, it would have been difficult to find. And you're saying you had them, I requested them from you, and I still couldn't even get them. So I understand you're listing a lot of other people. I reached out to a lot of other people too, and they had difficulty finding. I reached out to members that were on the committee back then. They didn't have it. So the point of the policy is, to Sandy's point, someday we're not gonna be here, and we need to set up the next CPC for success. And having it, and personally, I could be on an island, I think going the encumbered route is just the riskier route, and especially when there's so many mechanisms in place that we can just extend it.
And I'm gonna just
That's why
add-
we need to have discussion.
Right,
Sure.
and personally, I don't have an opinion one way or the other, because I just don't know enough. And if I don't know enough, I'm gonna go to, whether it's the attorney or the town council or
okay.
to accountant, then I'm gonna take, that's what they're there for, so.
Yeah, and on the common point, the common restoration projects in particular, there's no doubt in my mind that those extra contracts we had to sign, the extra funds we encumbered after that main contract was encumbered,
Some of
was
it was
necessary.
before.
yeah, you know, was necessary. Like, all of it, in my mind, it was necessary as part of the project that needed to be done.
Yep.
But it wasn't part of that main initial contracts that were signed. Yes, they still were things that we needed to do, still things that needed to happen down the line, and that was part of the project that passed a town meeting, but there was a sunset date, and I think that's what we need to be able to pay attention to and do and move forward going.
Which is why they said that, once the contract is signed, they consider all funding to be
I don't know if you, this is, because I never can find anything. This is from Ginny Kramer, who was the town
That's the first half, and then
um,
there's a part with Mary, lawyer.
attorney. Says, I think you need to ask the town accountant when the funds are considered encumbered. As you know, she has to sign every contract for certifying availability of funds. If the funds are considered encumbered when you sign the contract, which I think would be a reasonable determination, I guess we can argue that means they have been expended for all intents and purposes, because if they are withdrawn, the town will still be on the hook for payment.
Of the
So-
contract.
That wording is,
Right.
to me, is the amount on the contract that was signed.
But it also.
The other
I-
discussion goes on about other funding and talks
So I-
about the example that I
Yeah.
gave you with the
So-
contingency funds.
But I listened to that wording, and it's my typical thing. Well, what about this, Sandy? Oh, it depends.
If I may be
Mary
pretend chair
made
for a
it much
second,
more clear.
I think we should move forward from this discussion on the sunset policy, encumbrance, all that till our next meeting, because we'll have the correspondence that you have, Paul, that form a majority of how you're thinking about this. And it'll help us be able to reflect and look at it as well. And it sounds like from my understanding, the committee does not want to move forward with making a sunset extension for the town records archival project right now.
We had
And it's not necessary because it's internal and we have plenty of time.
Yeah, we have plenty of time. On the-
If we were gonna do the common restoration, and there was an article in the packet, which I don't know if it's printed, I stripped out a lot of that language just because I didn't think we needed all of it. It
on
just
the-
says we're extending it.
On the-
If we choose to go that route, there is language.
On the common restoration, I will make a suggestion that we decide to submit a warrant article to do an extension. We have our next meeting before town meeting, that we could decide to have the select board pass over the article. So we could still pass over if this committee decides to, but we need to submit it before our next meeting if we want to even have a chance to be on town, on
We
the,
already had a committee vote on this in 2021, that the sunset provision didn't apply anymore. We made a decision not to move forward with that, and we
There
didn't.
was no vote at that meeting.
No vote?
Nope. It was just
We
you
had
telling
a
the-
discussion.
You telling the committee, and that was that. There wasn't a
I was
robust.
not the only one in the discussion. John was in on it.
No, it wasn't
Evan
on
was
tape.
in on
It
it,
wasn't
Mary
on tape.
Gloria
It's not
was
on
in
And
tape.
we're
Joanne
not-
was in on it.
We're not being productive right now.
Joanne did draft a warrant article back then, and you specifically told her to take it off. There was 2 meetings where it was you
That was,
presenting.
she had originally done that, and that's
So
when the
I
conversation
understand-
came
I'm not
up,
a-
which led to the
That's, we're
discussion.
going.
So I understand the
Guys.
history's somewhat important, but it's not, to Justin's point, or whoever said, it's not productive at the moment. So I actually kind of like Justin's kind of approach to this. I think I need more information to really have an opinion, basically, so.
My one question I had about the item 6, last meeting, Ken requested that Candy come in to talk about her project before we extend the sunset. Is that something that we're gonna require of applicants, or are we just gonna allow the designated CPC representative to do that? Because that was something you did request, to have Candy come in
Last month?
last month.
Candy had sent us,
Oh, Andy, yeah.
she had sent us a picture. You weren't here last month, were
He
you?
was on the owl.
Yeah, all right, I didn't realize that. So she sent in a picture of the work that was done, the latest work that was done by the binder. We have a photograph of that I shared with all of you last month. She doesn't currently, she hasn't currently selected what's moving forward. Maybe she has now, but the last time I talked to her, she hadn't. We could certainly have her come in and talk about that if you want.
It's not something I want, it was something Ken requested, and I just didn't know if that's something that we're gonna do. Is that
I
something that
don't
we
think-
bake into the policy?
I
Do we have
personally
to
don't
have the
think that's
people come in?
necessary.
I think case by case.
I think that's a case-by-case basis.
Yep, okay.
In this case, I would like.
Because this is a continuing project.
Yeah.
She sent us photographic documentation of what's been done. The project's moving forward, but if people want somebody to come in, you're right, because we're funding the project. So
For
if
this
you want
specific
somebody to come
project,
in.
I would like.
I had
Candy to come in.
invited her last month and she couldn't make it.
And I
so
think
we could
even in the
certainly
past,
consider it.
either she did or Maureen or somebody brought a bunch of them in for us to see.
Yeah.
I think it was
physically.
Candy, yeah.
So yeah, case by case is how I would.
But, it just went away. The Sunset article, Colleen drafted one, and I edited it.
I didn't actually draft one.
You sent me one.
I think it was like a boilerplate, like, here's an example, it's
Okay,
definitely not
okay,
to be
but
applied
that's like,
here.
that's what I used, and I took out a lot of the excess, and it just, so basically it says, to see if the town will vote to extend the sunset provision.
Oh, for the common restoration.
Right, because that's what we're talking about.
Yeah, that's the one Joanne drafted, I just wrote it up again.
Right, but it's like, I just took out a lot of that. To see if the town will vote to extend the sunset provision for $651,723 for the purpose of restoring the historic Grafton Common with such funds as previously authorized to be expended before June 30th, 2026, unless the CPC by two-thirds majority vote extends the deadline or take any action relative thereto.
So that's not really on the agenda for tonight, so I don't know if we should be discussing that.
It is, it's right here, number 6.
It says sunset extension, I would call it okay.
Oh,
myself.
it does say common restoration, I apologize, I only read town.
I mean, I added
Okay,
both.
So,
So this is, it's for this committee to decide, is it needed? And the language is here if you think it's needed.
It
To move
opens
us-
a whole
to
kettle.
move us
of-
forward.
It's all,
Yep.
it's getting late too. Justin,
to move us forward, I will move that this committee submits that draft you just read of a warrant article to the select board for inclusion in May town meeting.
okay.
Second.
So I have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion?
Yeah, one of the things, and I'm fine with that, knowing that we're gonna talk about it next month and we can pull it if that's what we decide. But that opens a whole kettle of fish, because if we're saying it needs to be extended now and it wasn't extended back in 2021, all those funds that were used were done after the sunset had run out.
Yeah,
That's really messy, and.
I do not
and-
disagree.
And again, we have written documentation that the town accountant said that those funds were considered encumbered back in 2021.
Yeah, exactly.
which is what you can say at
next
town
month-
meeting, right? Is that,
Correct.
this is us just housekeeping, this is a housekeeping measure on our part.
Yep.
It was during the time when we were switching over from, it's doing a two-thirds majority vote. You know, we're gonna even have some past warrant articles where we wrote majority vote. Like, this is just our housekeeping, we're still learning, we're still, figuring things out. It's just a housekeeping
And
measure.
the funds that were expended were in the citizen encumbered. This is just housekeeping to just dot our, cross the Ts, dot
Yeah,
our Is.
we're just trying to set a procedure for the future, and we're just, yeah.
And it may
I
not
think-
even go to town meeting, because if next meeting we see that
Correct.
correspondence, we see it, pass this over.
It-
to-
It'll,
yeah.
it'll be on the initial warrant that gets printed, but we can choose to pass it over. It can be marked as, will be passed over by by finance committee. So
Yep.
I think we have the option to still pull it if we decide as a committee after we
And
get more
as long as
information.
everyone's just transparent on what we're trying to do, there can't be any issues.
Okay, so I have a motion and a second. All those in favor of the motion to extend the sunset for the Grafton Common project?
Aye.
Please say aye.
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 All those opposed?
Nay.
Declare the motion carried. What's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 6 to 1. Okay. And,
So is that going to be on the warrant?
yes, so I need to get that language to you. Oh,
Does it say 2/3 too? Because I might
I
have
just
written
added
majority.
that.
Okay,
it wasn't.
yeah. Because I don't think it was written back then, but you guys
No,
were
but I mean,
starting to
I was like,
transition.
I'm slow, but I did pick that.
Yeah.
I gathered that.
I don't know that warrant article said 2/3. The 2/3 was the discussion for our vote when it
Yes.
switched over to us, not for town meeting.
But for the
Oh,
new
is it
warrant
not a
articles
two-
he's talking
I
about.
don't believe it's 2/3, it's a simple majority.
But the
At
new
town
warrant article
meeting.
he's
Town
talking
meeting.
about.
But
Two
our
thirds is
warrant
about us.
language would say 2/3, so that if we had to extend it again, which I highly doubt we would,
So-
that it would be 2/3 for
Is this-
us.
And that's the thing,
But it's
that,
not.
that,
is
this
that-
whole project may be all done by town meeting. That's the most
100%.
It could be, and, yeah,
thing
there's,
about
there's
all of
a few reasons we could choose to pull it, so,
Exactly.
Isn't this moot if it's done?
yes.
Exactly, which is why
Right.
this isn't a problem.
So
This
that's,
is a backup
Pull it.
plan.
so,
Why are we
Because
talking
it-
about it?
It's housekeeping.
no, no.
It's not, moot, it's
Suspenders,
housekeeping.
that's all.
Yeah, it's only moot.
Well, I
if
got a
that
messy house.
So,
So, the motion carried, we can vote to pull or pass over, this, warrant article at the next meeting. Should we have additional information come forward that we decide with
Yep.
Paul's emails that this is indeed not necessary?
so we should probably just, as a explicit point, to have it on the agenda for next meeting as well, just to be sure that we have the open meeting that we could pull it in that case, too, and make a vote on. But, to move myself along, John, if you'll permit me, Grafton Upton land purchase, the only thing I know, I forget if it's been since our last meeting or just before, but the planning board did vote to recommend the town pursue purchase of it, of that land, and I believe the select board also,
Who's in charge of pursuing that project?
it's either someone, Evan or Evan's office, the town administrator's office, or it's Fiona in the town planners, I believe. I think it's closer to Evan.
I
Considering it's
haven't
a-
received anything.
Yeah.
I did talk to a selectman, and she said that, just so she knew
Yep.
that we're following it, and she said, okay, so that we'll make sure.
If someone doesn't, if it's not actively done, the railroad's gonna end up getting it, and he's gonna clear cut it and park.
I know at the very least, the
Yeah.
Upton
Trailers
Town
there.
Administrator the Upton Town Administrator used to be our town planner when I first started as planning board, and he was the one who reached out to us to suggest it. So he is definitely following it.
Yeah, this is
What's his name?
very,
What was his name?
Jolene.
Jolene,
Oh.
This is not in the back boiler. This is very front and center. People are paying attention to it. I
Okay,
don't
good,
think it's
good.
gonna get, lost in the shuffle.
Good, 'cause
We're not
we-
getting duped here.
We don't want the railroad to get it.
Yeah.
in
Where
in
is
theory, they
sign
still
out
could,
there,
but we don't want,
It's
Like a
on the
big sign out
Upton,
there now for the-
Grafton line,
It's a-
kind of
Yeah, it's,
near Milford Road and one,
it's in the corner, it's in the corner
40.
of Grafton and there's,
So, yeah, the property is on both sides of Wildwood Lake.
yeah,
Wildwood
yeah,
Reservoir.
this piece is right,
Right, it's right on Wildwood.
it's right on the railroad right away and yes, it's actually isolated. It has no access to it. It's a
Except the
landlocked,
railroad.
except for the railroad. And yeah, and there's open space on both sides in both towns.
Yes, it'd be a shame.
Yes, and yeah, and I know any experience with a railroad, you locals have especially on the Concom side, have very little power at all.
I think that's the right parcel.
And
Once they buy it.
I'm
Yes.
gonna
Once they
ask a
have
question that
control.
might be
Yep.
silly, but I was off this board for a little bit. This is on our board because we are prepared to potentially assist, or is this just we want updates?
we're paying for it.
Got
We
it.
would likely fund it.
Like I said, I was gone for a couple of months. I want to make sure that's what we're
People
doing.
usually talk to us because they want money,
That's a good point. People don't seem to come here just to see how we're doing.
not just to
think
say
this is-
hi,
Yeah.
because we're so
For sure.
fun. I'm just gonna interrupt
But it
them
looks like
with,
that.
this is from Eric. He was sorry he couldn't attend. My wife had our baby girl earlier than expected. So congratulations to
Congratulations,
Eric
Eric.
on their new.
Awesome.
Yeah,
That's fair.
That is a
Your
fair
family.
excuse.
That's a pretty good excuse.
He's having fun.
Actually,
Right,
I
so
don't know about
that's- That's
I
a
don't
good
know.
excuse, but you can't use it that often.
He's got a
Every
little
9
bit-
months at
he's
least.
got a little bit
Yeah.
until he can use that one again.
Okay. So that was Affordable Housing Trust, town records, historic gravestones, again, I'm happy to pull that and just say, okay, we'll turn that money over and then start over, if that's what you guys want to do. Because this
Yeah.
does not have a sunset,
Which one?
historic gravestones.
Yeah, that one's that's the one that caused
This is,
the policy.
no, it's not. I mean, there was some other one that was a large amount of money, because this is not.
Who was the,
Roger
Who was the
Holman, and
original
that's the only
applicant for-
reason I'm like hanging on to it, because I feel like I owe it to him, and I'm gonna be haunted
so,
for not getting this done.
so the original applicant is no longer with us for this officially?
No, he's connected.
Oh, Roger died
Yeah, years ago.
10 years ago.
Roger was the
Well,
one
it's
that,
down
that
anyway.
got this committee, got this CPA passed.
I was gonna say, isn't the,
Maybe 7,500 felt like a lot back when we didn't have a lot of money.
So-
was this,
Chair?
this was Richard Whitney's baby too, right? He
No,
was
no,
on
no,
the-
no.
He took
Oh,
up
he
the
actually,
torch for a
he
little
made the
bit.
little,
He
That's
actually
just-
tried
he
to
was
do
there for a little
something.
while.
but then.
Put a
he,
temporary
um,
protecting.
And
thing
wasn't
in.
this something that we talked about was so difficult for so long to make any progress on?
Well, the problem that it's had fits and starts of, it's late.
John.
Do we recreate it? If we recreate it, do we take it out? If we take it out, you have to get permission from Mass Historical, you have to get permission from the NIMUX, because there actually theoretically could be, I don't know that there really are, NIMUX in the grave, so there's all kinds of state laws. And then if you take it out, where do you put it? Do you put it at the municipal center? Do you put it in the historical? So there's like all this back and forth, and what do we
I
do?
think we've done all we can.
And I met with the consultants, and they felt, if it's consolidated, it's okay, and out, and
John?
the atmosphere, and,
This project was
If
approved
I
in
may,
2004.
real quick,
20
this was an
20 years.
advertised meeting for Zoom in public, and the Zoom died because her laptop died. So the entire meeting is ended.
okay.
So
I thought you had your
I will
charger.
move that we adjourn right now because we have no,
Oh, you don't have to
Her
plug.
charger?
Okay, so that,
I move we adjourn.
so we're officially adjourned?
I move that we do so.
Second.
Okay. No discussion, all those in favor?
Aye.
Yeah,
All
when
those
that happened,
opposed?
and unfortunately, we kind of kept going, and I don't think we should have done that.
Adjourned at 9:25, 27.
When's our next meeting?
Our next meeting
week.
is, no.